freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all. You're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery one mind at a time. Today is Sunday, June 2nd, 2019. This is episode number 211 of What on Earth is Happening. We have a great show lined up for you here today. We're going to be talking about right livelihood. It's a concept I've brought up in the past. It is obviously a concept from the Buddhist philosophical tradition that relates directly with natural law, but we are going to flesh it out in detail today. And I'm going to be giving some examples of what right livelihood actually is and what it most certainly is not. So that's coming up on this edition of What on Earth is Happening. So a couple of quick housekeeping duties that I want to get to is that I will be speaking at Anarchadelphia, the first ever inaugural Anarchadelphia conference here in the autumn of 2019. This conference will be taking place here in Philadelphia on September 13th, 14th, and 15th. The guys from the State of Anarchy are the hosts of it. I'll be one of the featured speakers. I'll be giving a talk that is going to be called The Sacred Gift of Anger, in which I'll talk about how the powers that be want to diminish the emotion of anger, of righteous anger, righteous indignation in people, and how they go about doing that, and how anger can be a truly motivational emotion if it is used in the right way, if it is processed properly and directed properly. Also, a big part of Anarchadelphia will be the debut of my first ever documentary film, which is called Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law, a feature-length documentary film about natural law, probably the first in the world, as far as I know. And that will be debuting at Anarchadelphia 2019. I'll also be giving a workshop. I will have to decide on what that's going to be. More likely than not, I've been kicking around the idea that I will be giving a workshop on how to teach natural law. For the potential teacher of natural law, I'm going to be probably doing a workshop with resources and information on how to actually go about doing this type of work. That's more what I'm leaning toward. It's not set in stone yet as what the workshop will be, but that is what I've been leaning toward, and it will probably have center around that in some way. So that's Anarchadelphia 2019. You can go to the whatonearthishappening.com website shown here, okay? And then you could click on the Anarchadelphia banner there to get tickets. That will take you to their main conference page. And if you use the coupon code PASSIO at checkout for your tickets, you will get 5% off your ticket sale, and 5% of the ticket sale will go directly to me as a donation, as an affiliate donation from the State of Anarchy and Anarchadelphia. So do check that out. And another quick announcement, I was interviewed on the Wizard Factory, which is a podcast that has been gaining some traction of late. This is hosted by Logan Hart and Brian Easterday, and I was interviewed this past week by them on the Wizard Factory. That interview is now up on my website. It's also up on my Facebook page. And you can check out the Wizard Factory on YouTube by going to the news article on What on Earth is Happening down here at Latest News. And in the Latest News section, or you could just click the News tab, and you could watch that full-length interview there. So do check that out. It went pretty well. I was pretty impressed with the content of that interview. So thanks to the guys from the Wizard Factory for bringing me on to their podcast. That being said, I do have one other quick announcement, and that is we've put together a great staff here at What on Earth is Happening, and we're always trying to expand, and we're always looking for people to join the team. And I want to say that the technical issues that we've been dealing with the last couple of weeks, while they've been frustrating, I think we have them all resolved. We got a new battery backup ups system here, which thank you to a viewer for sending that. That was a wonderful gift. Technology gifts we so appreciate here, because we put them all into the work and we put them to use. We don't waste any of the tech gifts that people send us. They are put to use here at What on Earth is Happening in service of the great work. So thank you to everyone who has donated in that capacity. And I hope that trend will continue, because that support is very much needed and it is very much appreciated. So that being said, we have been looking to get kind of a technical support volunteer in here, because almost all of the technical support duties fall to me when there are problems, and I have to take myself off of other projects in order to solve technical problems when they do arise, and they do arise. So we could still use some help in that regard. We have a couple of people who have expressed interest, and I'll probably be meeting with some of them hopefully this coming week when I have some time in my schedule. But we are looking for a technical support volunteer. Okay, you should be a qualified technical support individual in the IT field who can come to the What on Earth is Happening studio. This isn't a remote job. You have to be able to come here and work on the computers at the location here in Philadelphia, in South Philadelphia. Okay, so it is an in-house job. Please take note of that. And if you're not from the area or cannot travel here on a weekly basis, please don't respond to this call for help, okay? And what you would be doing here at the studio one day per week, probably one day per week, would be to troubleshoot various technical issues as they arise and lend your technical support expertise. You must have high-level familiarity with the Macintosh and Windows operating systems. We run the most recent versions. We generally keep our operating systems and software and hardware pretty much up to date here. We don't run ancient equipment here. We pretty much run what is largely state-of-the-art equipment to try to bring out the best quality that we can. So, it's the latest version of Mac OS, the latest version of Windows, etc. And you're running on modern machinery, not ancient, hardware. So you should have familiarity with those operating systems, high-level familiarity with those operating systems, ability to troubleshoot them and troubleshoot hardware. You should have, high-level technical troubleshooting skills and good organizational skills, because we do try to keep things pretty organized here as well. So if you have those type of skills and you're local to the Philadelphia area and you want to join the great work and be part of the What on Earth is Happening team, please get in touch with my assistant, Leah Boone. She'll be going through people who want to basically apply for this team membership in this position that we have available. So her email address is Leah, Leiha, at whatonearthishappening.com. You see it right there in the lower third. So get in touch with my assistant, Leah, and come and be part of the What on Earth is Happening team, because we definitely need the help. We could use this type of technical support from someone who is willing to come and volunteer one day a week. So that's all the housekeeping that I have for today's show, and I guess we can jump over into the slides. So there is the Anarchadelphia banner that the guys from State of Anarchy made. You could use, again, promo code PASSIO to get 5% off your ticket sales, and 5% they'll match and donate directly to me. So that's coming up. It's going to be a great conference. A lot of fantastic speakers. Max Egan's going to be a part of it. Larkin Rose, Benny Wills that I interviewed last week. So many people, so many great people that are going to be part of this anarchy-related conference here in Philadelphia. So do come and check it out. So the show for today is a discussion on right livelihood. And again, I've mentioned this concept in the past when talking about natural law. And this is so important to natural law. It is really one of the most critical aspects of living in harmony with natural law, as we will see. Thanks to Brett for making the title cards, looking great as always. And thank you to the whole staff for your work here. My producer Mike's been doing a fantastic job. Really appreciate his efforts. Thanks to Tom and everyone else on the setup crew, and of course my assistant Leah for keeping things running smoothly here at all times. So, we're going to talk about what right livelihood is. And the first thing that we have to understand is, yes, this is a philosophical Buddhist concept. That's where it comes from in the Eastern traditions, at least. I would say this is directly related with natural law, and I'm going to explain why, of course. But in the traditional sense, we get the general philosophical viewpoint of right livelihood from the Buddhist tradition. And, I haven't really covered Buddhism too much here on What on Earth is Happening, but we're going to talk a little bit about it today. We, of course, study integral traditions here. That means that there's no one path that is the only path to understanding the truth and understanding the world of the occult and natural law. There are many different paths that can help lead us to that understanding. And my approach has never been a singular approach. It has always been a multifaceted approach to truth, okay? I would refer to it as an integral understanding of how things work together. And that means you take the best parts of all different traditions philosophically as they resonate with truth, as you understand them to resonate with truth, and you bring them all together. So, 1 week we could be talking about Freemasonry. Another week we could be delving into the tradition of Kabbalah. And some weeks we will discuss things like Buddhism. Okay, so this is the world's fourth largest religion, actually. But Buddhism is often not just considered a religion. It does have some religious trappings, but in general, it's a philosophy on life that is characterized by a few overarching, worldviews and general points about what is taking place in the human condition. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to talk about right livelihood as part of what Buddhists would call the Eightfold Path, and we'll talk about what that is. So let's dive further into it here and look into the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Now, again, I'm not championing Buddhism as like the be-all and end-all. I'm just saying that it's something that along someone's individual spiritual journey, they can pick up something from and, move forward with it, because there is a lot that does resonate with truth and natural law that comes from this tradition, as there are from many other traditions. Again, I take pieces from Kabbalah, from Tarot, from Freemasonry, from Rosicrucianism, from Thelema, etc. So again, this is part of an integral approach to truth and an integral approach to understanding natural law principles. And I think that these fit in very nicely with a deep understanding of natural law, and they certainly resonate with my worldview and my understanding of how things work, if you get them down to their core esoteric principles. Again, this can be perverted and turned into a religion, okay, into a form of control, if we allow it to be, okay, if we allow that effect to happen. And I'm not going to tell you that Buddhism can't be just as corrupt as any other religion in the world, because it most certainly can, okay? But when we look at the pure tradition from an esoteric point of view, and we understand the subtle factors of these Four Noble Truths as I'm going to present them here today, I think you could understand how real esoteric Buddhism could be as powerful as any other of the mystery traditions of consciousness and natural law. So the first of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism is that, and people will often say this very, very incorrectly, as life is suffering. That is a complete mistranslation of how it is written in the original Buddhist texts, okay? It would be, a good translation would be either life contains suffering, or life is or can be stressful, okay? Life is stressful is one of the ways that that could be actually translated correctly, not life is suffering, as you will hear many Buddhists who don't understand the esoteric aspect of that first noble truth present it very incorrectly. I would say that the best wording of the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life innately contains suffering, including self-inflicted suffering. Okay, so there are many kinds of suffering that life contains as we make our journey through it, but life itself is not suffering. That is not how I would interpret the first noble truth, and I don't think anyone else should either. So life innately contains suffering and things that will cause suffering. But what we really want to focus on and look at when we look at the whole Buddhist path and philosophy is that life contains certain elements that are self-inflicted aspects of suffering. Okay? And that's very important to distinguish. Things that we cannot really control, that we have no control over, that may cause suffering in our lives, for instance, death, which is a natural part of the life cycle, okay? We're going to experience, other beings that we love, people, animals, etc., pass away, okay? And, their consciousness go elsewhere. This is part of life, okay? This is not a self-inflicted aspect of suffering, but of course we will feel suffering when, loved ones leave us. So, what we really want to look at here is that life contains self-inflicted suffering, okay? Because this is part of making the distinction between what you do have power to change and what you don't really have power to change. You don't have power to change the laws of nature. You don't have power to change the way life itself, generally functions, okay? That's going to be what it is, as it was designed to be. But what we do have power to change is aspects of suffering in our lives that are self-inflicted, okay? So we have to know that that exists. Life innately contains things that are going to cause suffering for us, and a lot of that is self-inflicted. That's the crucial part of the first noble truth. The second of the four noble truths of Buddhism is that the cause of the self-inflicted suffering that we experience in our lives is attachment to desire. Now, many people will word this one way more simply than it should be, and they'll say the cause of suffering is desire, and it's way overly simplistic, okay? If you want to get down to a real esoteric philosophical understanding of the real philosophical Buddhist tradition, no one would word, just as they would not word the first noble truth as life is suffering, okay? It contains suffering, including self-inflicted suffering. Anyone who really understands the esoteric elements of Buddhism would never say the second noble truth as the cause of suffering is desire, okay? The cause of our self-inflicted suffering is attachment to desires that we have, meaning that it's okay to experience desire. We all do. If we're in the 3D world, we're going to have desires, okay? It doesn't mean that those are unnatural. It doesn't mean that we should try to squash them or suppress them. It means that we should be aware of them, watch them, okay? Be able to move through them and be able to set them down when need be, okay? It's what really causes self-inflicted suffering is attachment to desire. But I'm going to go one step further than that and say it's attachment for the desire of reality to be a different way than how it actually is, okay? Meaning we want natural law to work a different way. We want the universe to work some different way. We want to do things that cause bad things to happen, but we want good things to happen as a result. and the universe just doesn't function that way, but we have an attachment to the desire for it to function the way we want it to, instead of the way it actually does. That's the main cause of self-inflicted suffering in this world. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean don't ever desire the world to be better than it is. It doesn't translate to don't understand that the world is in a bad condition, and the human condition is slavery and basically endless suffering because of the self-inflicted suffering we've caused ourselves, okay, through government, through all the other ways of wrong thinking that we've implemented and hardened into institutionalized, life here on Earth, okay, and we've basically built a prison system, we've built a slavery system, okay, so it doesn't mean don't see that honestly for what it is and then try to change it, okay, it's saying don't have attachment to try to make things into the opposite of reality, the way that they actually do work, okay? Because you don't like the way reality works, then you have this attachment to a desire for it to work some different way. That's what this means, okay? It's like the prayer of serenity, okay? Give me the grace to accept that which I can't, that cannot be changed, okay? And yet, the courage to change that which should be changed, and the wisdom to know the one from the other. That's the real prayer of serenity, okay? What we're talking about here is when we want things that cannot really be changed to change, okay? Like how natural law functions in our lives. We don't want to understand that. We want to ignore it. We want to lie to ourselves that it doesn't exist. And therefore, we're in this state of continual self-inflicted suffering. Okay, we're bringing that down upon ourselves. No one else is doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. And that causes attachment to the desire for things to be some other way. It's also the attachment of worldly desires that, we just want to have for our selfish pleasure and selfish benefit, not doing anything to help or assist the human condition. When we give of ourselves, at least even part of our time and skills to help others and to really attempt to put the truth out into the world and attempt to better the human condition in whatever way we can and whatever way we know how, then we're going to see the universe come to our assistance and our life to flow more effortlessly and for less self-inflicted suffering to happen. That's how karma really works, folks. That's how natural law really functions. Okay? So that's the second of the Four Noble Truths. The third of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism is that there is a way to alleviate self-inflicted suffering. Self-inflicted suffering can be conquered. It is not a hopeless case. We are not doomed to endlessly, put our own hand over the fire of the stove or over the burning coals and burn our flesh away. It is a choice. There is a way. It can be conquered. It can be defeated. Now, the non-self-inflicted aspects of suffering that come about naturally in the world, there's going to be natural disasters. There are going to be deaths of loved ones, etc. We're going to have accidents in our lives. We're going to make mistakes. They're going to be sources of suffering for us, okay? It doesn't mean that you can conquer every single form of suffering. What it means is that you can learn how to conquer the ways that you are holding yourself back and the ways that you are causing suffering in your own life needlessly, that need not be that way. All right, that's what the third noble truth is. So that's great news. That means there is an answer to why we suffer. There's a reason why we suffer, okay? And it can be conquered. There's a reason for the suffering, and it can be conquered. This is all good news, good, positive things to understand about reality, instead of having a completely dark worldview that, oh, woe is me, nothing can be done, I'm just doomed to suffer here, okay? Obviously, we have control over certain things, and other things, other people have to make the decision to change their own minds, their own hearts, and their own behaviors, and therefore change their own lives and impact the collective quality of life here on earth for all. So this is actually largely good news, okay? And the fourth noble truth of Buddhism is that the method for ending self-inflicted suffering is what is known as the Buddhist Eightfold Path, or the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism. Okay? So there is an eightfold methodology by which self-inflicted suffering can be conquered. Now, we could talk about all of these at some future point. I'm only going to very briefly highlight some of them. And these are kind of very similar to the steps of initiation in the Western mystery traditions of occultism. Okay? So let's look at what that path of alleviating suffering actually is. It's called the Eightfold Path, and it's right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, which was what the bulk of the topic of today is. I'm laying the groundwork for that here. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So what we're talking about really here is putting your consciousness into alignment. And, understanding thought, speech, and action, those are the aspects of consciousness. Our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. Okay? And our understanding means coming into knowledge of the truth. And my producer is trying to get my attention. Just give us one moment. All right, folks. So I'm just being told that we're having technical difficulties that we cannot control, that we have no ability to solve, because it looks like Vimeo is actually down. The actual Vimeo site is completely down, and it looks like YouTube is partially down as well. So we are still streaming fine here. We are still recording the show in real time. People may have to check this out in podcast, because it looks like there's some major internet difficulties, at least here on the East Coast. So my producer just wanted me to unmute in Discord, so people, if they want to follow along in Discord, can check out the show from the Discord call-in room. So I just did that. Looks like that's okay. And just want to say, it's again, it's always a house of cards when it comes to technological issues, and some of it is not within our control. The things that were self-inflicted, we took care of in between last week and this week, and we got some new electrical, power surge equipment. We got some. We eliminated a couple of adapters, and we're able to run some better cabling. So it looks like we haven't been having any glitches so far. I'm very happy about that. But, hey, we can't control what happens with Vimeo and YouTube, Those are other services. Who knows what kind of technical issues they're wrestling with. But again, it very much, it's almost synchronistic. It goes hand in hand with the topic today, that some things are within our control to be able to fix and improve, and some things are not. And that just has to be accepted as how it is. Okay? So we just continue. We press on. We move on. And we do the best that we can. And, we let the chips fall where they may. Okay? But we make the right effort. Okay? That's a huge part of this, right? You do what you can. Okay? Staying in mindfulness of the entirety of the situation and exercising right concentration, focusing on the task at hand. Okay? And when we put these all together, what we're really talking about, as I was saying before, is this is about bringing consciousness into alignment with itself within the individual, okay, such that we are not in contradiction. We're bringing our thoughts, our emotions, our speech, and our action all into alignment, okay, and all the different modalities of thought, okay, concentration, contemplation or mindfulness, okay, right effort, okay, the willpower, bringing the willpower to the task at hand, and then, of course, the understanding of truth, the understanding of what is right and what is wrong, okay? And right thoughts and right actions, right speech and right actions. We combine all of that together then with performing the right tasks that we need to perform on a daily basis to support ourselves and make a living in the world, okay? I don't really generally like that, phrase, make a living, but, we use it to mean supporting ourselves in the resources that we need to get things done on a day-to-day basis, okay, to have the resources that we're going to require to operate in the world. And that's important. And no one should shame anybody for that. Researchers who do a lot of hard work, who are putting the word out in whatever capacity they can, in whatever way that they can, they should be supported in their efforts. I've always agreed with that. I think there are ways that they could go about doing it where the hand of theft in the form of government taxation doesn't come into into play as much by thwarting that and trying to do end runs around it. I totally support that. Because I think we should pay in as little into this slavery system that those resources are then turned around and used to enslave us even further. So I would like to see more people, buck that entire system to the extent that they can. But what we're really talking about here today is people who choose to do jobs on a daily basis that are actively causing harm to others, as we will see. So, and that the real answer is that they should not perform those jobs, regardless of what it means for them in their lives. That's a very tough decision and a hard pill to swallow, as we'll get to. But going back to the Eightfold Path, this is sort of the initiatory tradition within esoteric Buddhism. Okay, and if we really understand what these things mean, we'll see that if you were to follow this Eightfold Path, it puts the consciousness into alignment, so that we are being that as we think, so we feel, so we act, and that trinity of consciousness is brought together as one and is not in internal contradiction within the individual. That's going to open up tremendous doorways for anybody that gets into that flow and that state of consciousness. Okay? We're getting in touch with the higher self by doing that, and we're putting ourselves onto the initiate's path. So this very much resonates in many ways with the esoteric occult traditions of the West. Okay, it's a bridge between the East and the West, the Eightfold Path and the initiate tradition. So, moving on from that, let's look at that middle part of the Eightfold Path. I believe. Let me just go back. It was number 5 out of the 8. Okay, and let's talk about what right livelihood actually is. So, right livelihood is an important aspect of the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. True Buddhism encourages its disciples to engage in compassionate activity and to make their living in a way that does not cause harm to others. What does this sound like, folks? Sounds an awful lot to me like natural law. This is part of natural law. Natural law is all about knowing the objective difference between right and wrong behavior, knowing which actions are rights because they do not cause harm to others, to other sentient beings, and which actions are wrongdoings or transgressions against natural law because the performance of them does cause harm to other sentient beings. So in the Buddhist tradition, this concept is there through right livelihood. It's also there through right action, of course. Okay? So we should not be taking part in occupations that are inherently, whether directly or indirectly, causing harm to other sentient beings. Okay, so, and we can't talk about every single job, every single occupation in the world, every single profession. We would be here for a month. Okay, I'm going to give a handful or a couple of handfuls of jobs today and talk about whether they constitute right livelihood or not. Some of them are outrightly wrong livelihood. Some of them I would consider almost noble professions, and some of them are sort of gray areas that it depends on the circumstances and who you're working for, the capacity in which you're doing the job. As we'll get to, they are often dual-edged swords, even though they, you might even say it's the same job, but it depends on, again, the circumstances that you're doing the job in. So we'll look at examples a little bit later, and then after the formal presentation, probably in the third hour of the show, depending on how the formal slideshow goes, we'll be taking your calls through Discord. You can go in through the call-in link on the show page, and I want people maybe to think about some other professions that they might have questions about, that whether or not they fall in with right livelihood, and or comment on anything that I said here today, or ask any questions that you'd like to. So calls will be coming up most likely in the third hour. So let's move on to the next slide. So, again, I'm going to present general jobs, occupations, and we'll talk about whether they constitute right livelihood or not. So continuing with what right livelihood is, a Zen Buddhist monk by the name of Thich Nhat Hanh said, to practice right livelihood, you have to find a way to earn your living without transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. The way you support yourself can be an expression of your deepest self, or it can be a source of suffering for you and others. Again, there's that concept of it's not only causing harm to others, but it's also causing self-inflicted suffering. So this is about what the real cause of the suffering that we experience from a self-inflicted aspect, is all about. And, this Buddhist monk is, he's in his 90s now, and he's been basically teaching the concept of right livelihood for a number of decades. And I think it's very powerful that he's putting in there that this directly relates to our experience of the world, okay? It can change how we experience our lives ourselves, and it also can change the quality of life for other people because you are affecting other people in the course of the work that you do on a daily basis. And let me tell you something, folks. I know there's a lot of people out there in the freedom movement that are in a lot of internal contradiction when it comes to this. Okay? A lot of people are still doing jobs that they themselves know that they shouldn't be involved with. Okay? So this is sort of almost it's not only teaching this concept, but it's an appeal. There's going to be an appeal on that you should trust in the universe. The universe will provide when you are doing the right thing. We cannot only we shouldn't be so fearful about what will happen without, the amount of money that we're currently making. Okay. I had to take a hit to do the right thing. Okay. And now, resources are very slowly coming back to the point where I'm able to support and grow this operation, not just scrape by. And that's a great thing. That's a testimony to the fact that I'm reaching people and having value in their lives. And so are the people who help out with the team to make this possible. Okay. And that's what this is all about. And when you're doing that, the resources will come. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. The next part of this that I want to get into before we start looking at different examples of different occupations and talking about, whether or not they are in alignment with right livelihood, I want to talk about how right livelihood directly relates to natural law, very crucially and critically. So right livelihood is an inseparable aspect of the understanding and application of natural law. Again, natural law being the inherent, non-man-made, eternal and immutable objective conditions that govern the consequences of behaviors of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence and the capacity to understand right behavior from wrong behavior. Okay? Meaning human beings and anything that is a higher level order of organization than a human being as far as consciousness is concerned. Okay? So to understand natural law means that you have to understand the difference between right and wrong behavior, and therefore you must include right livelihood as a part of that understanding. It means that you're in contradiction if you say you understand the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior, and yet you're still in an occupation that is causing harm to others, whether directly or indirectly. Okay? So to truly bring our behavior into alignment with objective morality under natural law, we must first know, not think, not believe, not guess. We must know if the tasks we perform in our daily work do not cause harm to others and are therefore in alignment with natural law and are therefore right livelihood. That's what constitutes right livelihood. So again, this concept is not just a Buddhist concept. It is a direct concept related to natural law and its understanding. And then, of course, our acting upon it, which is what the exercise of conscience is. Knowledge is the knowledge of the difference. Conscience is the knowledge between the difference between right and wrong behavior, and the exercise of conscience is the free will choice that we exercise to choose either right action over wrong action, or unfortunately, as so many people are doing by being in wrong livelihood, wrong action over right action, which is causing all the chaos and self-inflicted suffering in our world. Okay, so when I talk about right livelihood, yes, this is something that is generally discussed as part of the Eastern traditions, particularly the Buddhist philosophy, but overarchingly, this is a natural law concept. This is something that you have to understand and you have to apply in your life if you're really going to put natural law into practice in the world. So if we engage in right livelihood on a daily basis as part of our understanding and application of natural law, the law of freedom goes into effect. The more people who will do that in the aggregate, the more aggregate freedom we will have as a society. The more people who will not engage in right livelihood and will continue to engage in wrong livelihood that is harmful to others, the more chaos, self-inflicted suffering, and ultimately tyranny and enslavement we're going to have in the aggregate as a people, as a whole society. That's the law of freedom. That is how it works in the world. Whether anybody really understands that or not, or wants to accept it, it doesn't require any belief. Day in and day out, just as a brief aside to the presentation, I talk with people who have literally attempted to apply natural law and then saw what they did if they don't apply it, and compared and contrasted the quality of their life, how it goes. You could see it in your own understanding. You don't need to believe me. It's not a belief system. It's not a religion. It is not anything that any human being has invented. Okay? It's not part of, constructural ideas. It's something that exists innately to nature itself, inherently in nature. So, people say, how did you understand natural law? I actually did tests on behaviors, my own behavior. I lived a certain way, not causing harm to people, and see what would happen. Then deliberately did a test where you actually don't engage in true objective morality and, do things that are not really right and or honest, and then see what happens. And you watch the difference in quality of your life. It's actually amazingly synchronistic. It's unbelievably synchronistic how the quality of your life will change. Most people won't even have the courage to do an experiment like that. But I talk to more and more people who have actually tested it in their lives. And that's how the scientific methodology works, folks. None of this is a belief. None of this is a religion. Never asking anybody to believe a damn thing. Test it out in your life. It's an extreme measure to go to, but you will see how it works if you do. And I guarantee you, if you are stepping into right livelihood and right action, you are going to see the universe come to your support in more ways than I could ever possibly express. It will become practically flowing and miraculous in some cases. Okay? And, I see how I lived before and what the quality of my life was. And I see what I'm doing now since I've been engaging in What on Earth is Happening and attempting to teach this stuff. And the quality of my life has changed dramatically for the better. Now, of course, you can still look at the external world and see all the self-inflicted suffering going on, and that can be depressing. It's not a cure-all for everything. It doesn't mean you're magically going to be happy all 24 hours a day. Okay? It means that your life will proceed in the direction that it needs to proceed. And you will not have obstacle after obstacle after obstacle thrown in your way. And support that you need will come to the table. I don't believe, I know that if you step into right action and right livelihood, the forces of the universe will come to your assistance and guide your life in the direction it needs to be. Without a doubt, I know that's true. So, that being said, this is a huge part of natural law understanding. Okay, so we have to take it in holistically as not just a Buddhist concept, but right livelihood is a critical and essential part, an inseparable part, as I've worded it here in this slide, of natural law. So, how do we know? Again, the key word on that last slide was you have to know whether your daily work is in harmony with right livelihood and therefore in harmony with natural law or not. So how do we know if we are in right livelihood? Okay? And, the real answer to this question before I even read the sentences on this slide is common sense and not lying to yourself. Okay? It goes back to the first step of initiation. Stop lying, especially to yourself. All right? So, common sense has to be applied. And we have to really be honest with ourselves about what we're doing. And too few people are willing to do that, folks. We're constantly lying to ourselves. We're constantly telling ourselves things that are not true. We're constantly believing our own bullshit here in humanity. And that's part of the problem that generates self-inflicted suffering. You know, we don't want to look at ourselves in the mirror and honestly assess what we see and what we are doing on a daily basis. People want to run away from that. You know, they want to run away from that internal shadow work. All right. So the key question that we have to ask ourselves when considering whether or not an occupation or profession constitutes right livelihood is this: does the behavior that I am performing in the daily activity of this work cause harm or loss to others, directly or indirectly? And if we answer that question honestly, not lie to ourselves, but if we look at ourselves square in the soul and we answer that question honestly, without lying to ourselves, we will know whether or not we are in the condition of right livelihood. It's not that hard, folks. All you have to do is say, in what I am doing, am I harming any other sentient beings? Am I taking anybody's property? Am I causing injury to them? Am I making their lives lower quality than what it was before? Am I helping them to be extorted or robbed by other people? Am I harming animals? You know, am I directly harming people or their rights, their freedom, etc.? You know, am I harming people's financial situations, robbing from them with hidden taxes like inflation? Okay, like the practices involved in fractional reserve banking, usury, etc. Okay, so we'll talk about this. But if you just simply look at the simple difference in the two images, you know, police with batons, guns, shields, etc., practically stomping over a woman, and then a librarian trying to help a young girl, you know, become an avid reader. Okay? It's common sense which one of these is right livelihood and which one is wrong livelihood. Okay? And we'll talk about this in detail as we go through examples. But this shouldn't be any hard brain work here, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this should be something that we just look at, ask ourselves honestly, and come practically to an immediate conclusion. You know, if your brain is functioning correctly, and again, if you're not lying to yourself, that's the key. Okay, you could just look at, shutting down free speech, you know, shutting down protests, taking people's rights, you know, engaging in practices whether it's moral or not. If a politician says to do it, they're following orders. Right there on its face, that's immoral. Order followers, any job that you're an order follower and you're involved in a hierarchical chain of obedience, okay? Command and obedience. Inherently, that's an immoral job. That's wrong livelihood. So we'll go through this. I'm going to talk about some professions, again, that I consider what I would call almost noble professions, that like they're real service to people, to humanity in general. And, you know, some people will debate that and they'll come up with examples where it's not the case. But, you know, we're talking about generalities here, okay? Not a lot of blanket statements, okay, when it comes to these jobs. You're always going to find some exceptions to the rule, all right? But what we're really looking at here is the common sense application. Does the task that you're doing on a daily basis cause harm to others? Okay, it should be very easy to see which ones do cause harm and which ones don't. So let's start looking at some examples. So, you know, obviously my listening audience should understand this, my viewing audience. People who might be new to this might not, but, you know, as we talk about here on What on Earth is Happening, government is slavery, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you understand that statement, whether you accept it or not, it's absolutely true. Government is a ruling class of so-called lawmakers that makes up their arbitrary dictates, their commands that they call laws, that allegedly they've been given this ability by, it being delegated to them, even though no individual on the surface of the earth has rights like that to command others. And, you know, we call that the delegation of rights that certain groups of people have. All it is a master class, you know, that then thinks that they have the moral right to issue commands called laws to their subjects or slaves, that is the subject class, and that they have some kind of a moral obligation to obey the arbitrary dictates set by the masters called laws. So if you're involved in government in any capacity, I don't care what it is, you could go all the way up to commander-in-chief, to any kind of high-level politician, all right? Anybody in Congress, anybody in the judiciary, all right? Anybody in any capacity, down to a desk clerk working in an office of a local politician. Anyone involved in any capacity of government, you're in wrong livelihood because you are participating in a system of slavery. That's what government is, and that's what you're supporting. All the way up from the highest levels of that hierarchy, all the way to the lowest levels of that hierarchy interfacing with the public. That is wrong livelihood on its face, because it's participation in human slavery. Whether you accept that or not, if you don't understand that, if you don't understand that government is slavery, you need to go back and listen to the podcast in order, and you most certainly need to watch my entirety of my natural law seminar, all 3 parts in their entirety. I would very much expect my viewing audience to understand this point and understand why right on its face any aspect of government, no matter how small, no matter how seemingly insignificant, if you're working for government, you are working with stolen money. You're receiving stolen money for your effort, for your work, and you are involved in slavery. Okay? Whether any role that you fulfill in that entire system, you are involved in what constitutes and amounts to slavery, and therefore you should not be doing that job if you're going to bring your actions into alignment with right livelihood and natural law. And again, this goes down to any level politician, anybody working for them in their offices, even state, federal, state, local, okay? Or, supra state, international law, UN, EU, all of that garbage, okay? Any aspect of government, all the way down to the local level. All right, so of course that includes the judiciary as well. And this is just a priest class to think they're God. Imagine thinking you're the judge of other people. You're the judge of other people. You're going to decide what happens to their lives. See, and whether they've actually committed harm or not, that's the key. I don't mind people judging people's behavior, but whether it's moral or not whether it's legal or not. Screw whether it's legal. Whether the behavior is legal is meaningless. Whether the behavior is moral, it means exercising personal discernment and judgment. But to dress in a black robe as part of some priest class and actually believe that you're in a position of authority over other people and what happens to their lives, these people actually believe they're gods that walk amongst humans. That's what they believe. They think they have special rights that other people don't have. They think they have the right to do things to other people that other people don't have the right to do. Could you imagine how fucked up somebody's thinking has to be and how fucked up their parents made these people to think like this? And we'll talk about other examples that people are equally just shit for brains. Because, that's what these people are. They're shit for brains children. I'm going to say it just like it is in plain street language. Okay? These are psychopaths who think they're fucking God. That's what they are. And you ain't no God of me or anyone else, psychopath. All right? You're a punk ass bitch in a robe. And that's all you'll ever be. That's all you ever have been, and that's all you'll ever be. Thinking you're God and you make the law and you judge other people. Yeah. You're sick in the head. You're sick in the soul is what you really are. That's what people like that really are. They're soul sick. They're soul dead, largely, as many of the other people we're going to talk about here in this section of the presentation. So, of course, these people are involved in the government in a sick, demented priest class capacity. And they're lunatic psychopaths Every single one of them, for even believing they have the rights that they think they imagine themselves to have. All right? Complete wrong livelihood, as is any aspect of government, ever, for all time in all places. So let's get that straight. No aspect of government can possibly be right livelihood, because it is the belief that man is God, man gets to make up what the law is, and there is a master class and a slave class. And if you're involved in it, you're participating in slavery, and that makes you an immoral person to do any aspect of that work. You are immoral. You are a bad person, an immoral human being, meaning you don't really deeply understand the difference between right and wrong behavior because you believe in slavery, and you believe it must continue. And that makes you a bad human being. That's what makes you a bad person. One of the many things that can make someone a bad person, but that's one of the biggest. How about all the order followers and enforcers of this slavery system called government, like the military? And I don't care which branch of the military it is. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, National Guard, doesn't matter. You know, let's go back to other agents of government real quick. You know, include park service in that. Include meter people in that. Meter maids, park service people, all of them. Anybody supporting government in any capacity. Okay? And then you have the strong arm of the government. You know, for the people that don't want to come into line, you have the military and the police. The enforcers of man's law, of men and women who think they're God on earth. Okay? Enforcing their dictates. Because that's all these order following dogs are. No respect for them. No one should have any respect for them. Have respect for people who fought as members of a militia to actually conquer tyranny. That's what I have respect for. That's a real fighting force. Not organized by a government, bonded in their mutual respect for human freedom is the only fighting force I have any respect for. Okay? That's not the United States government. That's not any state's government. Okay? Anywhere on the earth. That's not any nation's government. Okay? The concept of militia, as put forward in the Second Amendment, is all about a fighting force of the people, fighting for their individual rights to be protected, coming together and bringing their well-maintained regimen of weaponry and tactics together in military style with military-grade weaponry to fight tyranny. You know, not this shit. This is called stealing resources from other countries that the sick, demented, psychopathic politicians in the United States tell them to go and seize. Like all the poppy fields of Afghanistan. How about that is one of the main aspects that this job entails. You know, securing the raw materials for the life-destroying hard drugs that are brought in here to the United States and refined in factories here in the United States. You know, harvested in Afghanistan, flown in to the East Coast of the United States, processed in East Coast factories to be distributed out through the rest of the middle land, U.S., West Coast, all over the whole U.S., and hook people on, you know, into the opioid epidemic that we have, whether it be done through the black market or whether it be done through legalized death drugs called opioids, which is a complete epidemic in this country. Epidemic levels, okay? It's pandemic levels, not just epidemic levels. It's everywhere throughout our society like a plague. And these are the people making it possible, okay? I'm all for putting any substance you want in your body. But let me tell you something. The kind of dangerous addiction and death that is caused by, you know, hard opioid addiction, it's gone up by 1,000% since we've been in Afghanistan. And it's not just that. It's what these people do militaristically, like the barbarians that they are, following any orders they're given to kill any civilians that they're told to kill, you know, invading other countries. These are invaders, is what they are. They're invaders. You know, you want to put your skill toward serving humanity, learn natural law and teach it to other people. That's how you're going to bring about tremendous change in the world for the better, not by going and following orders and wielding a weapon at somebody's face because you were told to. You know, these people don't have any real conscience. They're joke followers that don't have any real courage either. They think they're such big bad men. You're little boys that don't know how to think for yourself, and you want other people to do your thinking for you. That's what you are. And there's nothing more sad or fucking pathetic than that. That's the most sad fucking pathetic form of life that there is on this planet, folks. You know, I don't care who I offend by saying that. Get as offended as you want. Get as offended as you like. If you're involved in the military in any capacity, you're an immoral person and you are partaking in wrong livelihood. Absolutely not part of right livelihood. You want to train with weaponry like that? Organize a true militia that is in keeping with the ideals of the American Revolution and why militias came together at that time to fight oppressors that were oppressing us, you know, on this land. You know, understand the difference between, you know, following orders as part of being a lapdog for a government or any nation in the world, and really being part of a true fighting force that's really fighting for freedom. You're telling people you're fighting for their freedom. You're doing no such thing. Never have been and never will. Okay? So stop lying to yourself. Again, this fits directly in line with the first step of occult initiation. Right livelihood's directly related to that first step of initiation, because for us to understand whether something's in right livelihood or not, we have to stop lying to ourselves. And that's what too many damn people are still doing. They can't look themselves in the mirror and tell the truth about what they're involved in. Or even if it makes them uncomfortable, they don't want to take the action to change it. Because they're too worried about, the short-term suffering that might result from me not having this job. All insignificant next to the damage you're doing to other people and the damage you're doing to your own soul. So if you're honest with yourself about those dynamics, you'd step out of that role and you wouldn't do that behavior anymore. And you'd find right livelihood. Let's look at the next example. Police. Well, this is just a different form of the military in the modern world. That's all it is. This is just a standing army that the founding fathers told people about that we should never let rise up in our midst, because this is just a mercenary army. It's a mercenary standing army. That's all I consider police forces anywhere in the world. Hired thugs paid to enforce the dictates of whatever slimeball politician tells them to go and carry out an order. That's all it is. And those orders are all coming down from on high, from the dark occult orders that stand behind government institutions. And these people don't think that that's true. They don't think they're involved in the occult, the dark occult. They don't think that Satanists give them their orders. Let me tell you something, little boy. You are owned and controlled by dark occult sorcerers of mind control. That's who owns your ass. They own your mind, they own your soul, and they own your ass, boy. So get as offended about it as you like. These people know nothing about what's going on in the power structure of our world. Think they do, and are poor little mistaken, misguided, misdirected, and completely misunderstanding souls that have no real knowledge, haven't done any real deep reading on practically anything, don't know how the power structure of the world works, know nothing about the occult, even though they're wearing their symbology all over their bodies, being ritually mocked. Watch my occult mockery presentation, occult mockery of police and military personnel. See how these people are looked at as the occultists' dogs. The dark occultists call them their dogs and their pets, because they just blindly follow and are just completely obedient to their commands with no will or mind of their own. They only have a mind to serve their institutional body, which is their proxy, psychological proxy family, their proxy parents, because every one of them have deep-seated mommy and daddy issues. nested way deep down in their subconscious mind and in their underlying psychology, unresolved psychological issues in all of them, making them act psychopathically and just be willing to follow somebody else's orders without actually exercising true conscience because you've come to know what behaviors are right and what behaviors are wrong. These people don't know that and they don't care. All they do is act on orders. So they're order followers. They're members of an institution that supports and is the strong arm of slavery. They're not exercising true conscience because any being that is following orders cannot truly be exercising their own conscience. Because their actions are actually driven by just obedience. In the following of an order, you are not thinking about whether the behavior is actually right or wrong, or causes harm to others, or does not cause harm to others. All you're saying is, I am willing to do that for a paycheck. I am willing to do that to keep this job. And that's what all order followers do. If they didn't, they wouldn't be order followers. They wouldn't be in that profession, in that occupation. So all order followers, including all military, all police, everybody involved in government, it's all wrong livelihood. It's all immoral behavior. It's all an immoral way of supporting yourself and making a living. Every single one, no exception, blanket statement. Every single individual in every one of those institutions I mentioned, 100% every one. And this is so hard for people to hear. They don't want to hear it. You know, they want to think that's part of the attachment to suffering. Attachment to self-inflicted suffering through attachment to desire. They don't want to accept that's the truth of the world. Not because I said so, because if you really do deeply understand the difference between right action and wrong action, you know that no one can have rights delegated to them that don't exist for another individual. Everybody's rights are exactly the same under natural law. That's what equality under natural law means. No one can delegate a right that they do not have. So no one can be given or gifted, rights that other people don't have. And these people believe they have rights that others don't and can do behaviors that other people cannot do. Right there on its face, you understand that it has to be immoral. Because you are inventing a right that doesn't exist under natural law. And you're claiming that you have extra rights that other people don't have. Right there, that's immorality. And then what you're doing is you're supporting the slavery system of man's law. And they're all just brainwashed little boys. I mean, if you just look at them, just look at them. Just look and really see their eyes, their faces. Look at these people. Barely want to call them people. Every one of them you could see has the mind of a little child. You can see it on their face. They really think they're big bad men. But look at them. There's nothing there in the eyes. There's nothing there in the soul. They're stunted people. Stunted through trauma. Stunted through parental abandonment issues that they never worked through. Stunted through other inadequacies, whether real or imagined. Stunted because they never did cognitive development or psychological developmental work. Probably dumb as a bag of screws, and a lot less useful. All right? Dumb as a bag of tacks, and certainly not as sharp. I mean, just look at their eyes and faces. I mean, just look at that image for a second. Just really look at the eyes. And you're seeing a stunted child, if you're honest with yourself. I know that's all I see when I look there. Not looking at a man. Not a one. Zero of them. And you can go on and on down the line, every single last one. It's some stunted little boy that is craving power over other people because they have no true internalized power through their true self. No connection with the power of the true self. And deep down in the subconscious mind, they know that they're in wrong livelihood. They know that they're immoral people. They know they're on the wrong side of history. Every single one of them, deep down in the subconscious mind. And the only real level of, I think no one should have any respect for them. They're unworthy of respect. Respect is an earned thing. It's something that first you have to give to yourself. No one else can give it to you. You have to have it for yourself, and then other people, you will earn the respect of other people when you have true self-respect. No one in this position of order follower can possibly have any true self-respect. Look at what you're saying. You're saying my own judgment sucks so bad that I'm going to just completely, allow other people to make the decision making regarding my behavior for me. How could anybody in that position have a drop of self-respect? Stunted children. That's all people like this are. Get as offended as you like. Nothing will ever make what I said there untrue. It's eternally true. And again, not because I said it, because it's factually correct and accurate. And that's how it really works when it comes to morality. So get as offended about what I said as you like, but you will never change the truthfulness of those statements. They're eternal truths. So, military, any branch, any capacity, any ancillary capacity, wrong livelihood. Not right livelihood, causing harm to others, supporting the slavery system, police, any capacity, dispatcher, people who work on their cars, it doesn't make a difference. Any capacity of people being involved with the police, wrong livelihood, not part of right livelihood under natural law. Supporting the slavery system, following other people's orders, whether they're right or not. Let's move on to the next example. So, ancillary aspects of government like lawyers, okay? Again, they're upholding man's law, which is a slavery system. I don't care whether you're a prosecuting attorney, whether you're a defending attorney, doesn't make a difference why you got involved, how much you want to think you're going to help people through this system. The answer isn't to try to use the system to change the system, okay? It doesn't work like that, you're going to go and join, the forces, of the orcs in Lord of the Rings, and you're going to change that from the inside. Go and join Sauron's forces, You're going to change that from the inside. You're going to go join with the White Walkers of Game of Thrones. You're going to change that system you're going to change the Night King system from the inside. Yeah. It works like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it works. See, all the ways we lie to ourselves, we just keep telling ourselves the same bullshit lies over and over and over again. Humans love the reassurance of comforting lies, especially when they're telling them to themselves. So it's no different when it comes to any aspect of being a lawyer, All you're doing is you're giving perceived legitimacy by taking part in this institution to the slavery system. That's all. You're giving of your time, your effort, your mind to the perceived legitimacy of a system of slavery that is actively harming other people, and you're partaking in it and receiving stolen money from it. Because that's all taxation is theft at the point of a gun. Or being told you'll be kidnapped and thrown in a cage if you don't comply. It's feudalism. That's the only form of government we have worldwide. It's all forms of feudalism, folks. That's all it is. A class of people that claim to own everything and have the right to take as much of anything that they want to take. That's called feudalism. And they just allow other people to exist on what they claim as their property. That's called feudalism. And it's a system of slavery, serfdom. And that's all these people called lawyers are contributing to. Every one of them. 100%. Blanket statement. Because you're giving legitimacy to the slavery called government. So this is also wrong livelihood. Not right livelihood. Oh, here's one of my favorites. The banking system. Oh. That's some good watermelon juice right there. So, Here's the Federal Reserve System. Total thieves. Class of people that considers themselves legalized thieves, stealing from the savings of everybody else through fractional reserve banking, through the taxation system, through the interest rates, through the printing of money, resulting in inflation, which is a hidden tax on people's earnings and savings. It's what makes the perceived cost of things and services go up, but it's not their value going up. It's the purchasing power of the unit of currency going down, and therefore you need more of it to receive the same goods and services. And that's a hidden form of theft. So they're taking from people's earnings in many ways. They're engaged in usury, charging interest on lended money. You know, all of this is are immoral practices. The whole banking system as it is set up today. I think people don't even understand. Like, when America was founded, banks weren't even allowed to really operate here. We put in provisions into, like, the Articles of Confederation to, like, make sure that banks could not operate on. Banks and lawyers were not even allowed to operate in early America. I mean, just go and research that, and you'll see I'm telling the truth. These institutions crept back in over time, you know, and this was all part of the reconquering of America by the British Crown, which it did very effectively. You know, royalty. Imagine that. I mean, that's what these politicians and bankers think that they are. Then you have actual people who actually think that genetically they're royal, you know, that they have special powers and rights that other people don't have. I mean, it all comes down to lying to oneself and thinking that certain people thinking that they're God on earth. That's what really this is all ultimately about. So when we support those systems of slavery, we're not in right livelihood. And it's a hard pill for people to swallow. And I'm telling you, if it's a modern banking institution, it doesn't matter what level of it, down to, from the manager, regional manager, local manager, all the way down to a standard clerk. You're involved in an institution that's ultimately causing harm in people's lives. Not providing any true service to humanity, but just trying to make money off of money and engaging in usury and other fraudulent practices when it comes to that level of banking and finance. I mean, all you have to do is look at the bailout here that took place in 2008, you know, and the whole too big to fail fiasco. You know, and how certain mega banks, you know, like Goldman Sachs came out on top of all of that, like because of the types of fraudulent banking practices they're undertaking. The Federal Reserve does the same thing. This is just a system of regional management of banks in the United States. It's a central banking system, which is part of communism. You know, this is what people who don't understand what communism is and haven't really deeply understood and integrated into their mindset what the planks of the Communist Manifesto really are. Central banking is one of the largest. And yet people would say that this is a necessary institution. They're legalized gangsters is what they are, moving the kinds of money around and engaging in the fraudulent financial practices they engage in with impunity. Legalized gangsters. Okay? So any aspect of the modern banking system is wrong livelihood. You know, and that goes for like people who work on Wall Street and are just engaged in rampant speculation when it comes to stocks, etc. They're not really providing any real service for people. They're manipulating numbers on a screen that direct the course of people's lives. It's legalized gambling, but, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with gambling. Just do it with your money, you know? These are people doing it with tons of other people's money. You know, and then the greed that gets associated with that. You know, talk about attachment to desires, creating self-inflicted suffering. Anything that just worships greed is not right livelihood. And you think these people are serving humanity? You think these people are serving truth? You think these people are serving natural law? You got to be joking. You got to be kidding yourself. These people are serving nothing but their own wallets. Pure, unadulterated, rampant greed and selfishness gone haywire. Any so-called occupation or profession that has that as its main characteristic is immoral and therefore not right livelihood. So I would definitely include the manipulators on Wall Street. Sorry, folks, just taking another drink. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Here's a huge one. The energy industry. And this is hurting people in so many different ways, causing harm. It's causing harm to the planet, number one, which is how we sustain life. Without the planet and its ability to, sustain us on the surface of this world, all life is going to take a negative impact. So to do things that are ecologically unsound and polluting, number one, on its face is inherently immoral. And this goes for energy production, big oil, drilling operations that are, look at the Gulf oil spill, the ecological disaster that was, the types of energy production with nuclear reactors, like what happened at Fukushima, still to this day polluting the Pacific Ocean to unimaginable levels. And all for greed, all to keep the world on an energy paradigm that is unsustainable. Just because, they set it up that way, they profited from it, and now they want to keep it in place. They're doing things with inventors that are inventing systems of clean energy, of potential free energy, radiant energy. Inventors found dead, poisoned. This industry is totally holding back modern innovation and technology. Totally holding back clean and renewable sources of energy that could be employed. People say, how would we run our cars? How would we, build the roads and the tires? All that, it depends on the oil industry. We haven't needed any of that stuff for over 100 years. I've talked about endlessly Tesla prototype technology of, hovering electrogravitic cars that would have been refined by now to tremendous levels of, complexity and technology and smoothness in the operation of that technology. He just built prototypes. And we don't need roads. We haven't needed roads for over 100 years if we wanted it. If we wanted to implement that technology. But again, people just let these people rule. And they let them harm the environment and the people and the animal life. It's just unbelievable, the environmental degradation and destruction that's been done through the polluting energy industry. And that's really any modern form of the energy industry, down to working in, the electric companies that, are just charging exorbitant prices for, something that really should be a resource that we have the ability to just simply distribute it to people and allow them to use it as they need it. And that, people say, that's socialist. No, it isn't. That's called harnessing the wheelwork of nature in the way that Nikola Tesla envisioned it, because no one should own resources that serve the entirety of the people of this planet, like all water, all electrical, systems of production and distribution. Was Tesla a socialist or a communist because he thought that the wheelwork of nature doesn't belong to certain individuals? It belongs to, it is there for everyone to access. It doesn't really belong to anyone. Nature has provided it to us for our benefit, and we should have access to it. That's why, water is a thing. It's not a right, but access to water is a right for human beings. And there are people who would say, no, we can take up and own all the land, all the water, all the resources of nature. No one has that right. This is called knowing what right property is, what true property rights are. There is a legitimate form of property. I own the camera I'm broadcasting on. I own this computer. I own the chair I'm sitting on. I own this microphone in front of me. I own my body. I own my consciousness. Why? Because I'm not claiming I own every camera in the world, or every computer in the world, or every microphone in the world, or every body in the world. You see the difference? It's what I'm using. It's what I need to do the things that I am doing. You know, I'm responsible for those things. I acquired them rightfully. There's a usage for them that I'm putting into effect. And I'm responsible for their maintenance and upkeep, you know? And that stops where other people's property begins. You know, I could put what I want in my house or my car, but I can't just put anything I want in somebody else's house or in their car. Just like I could put into my body what I want, but I can't put into somebody else's body what they don't want in their body. You know, well, just because I'm saying that, you know, energy doesn't belong to just small groups of people, you know, who have set up a blockade against other forms of true free energy technology and other ancillary, you know, non-polluting forms of energy production and distribution. Certainly much more ecologically sound than what we have in place today. It doesn't mean that I'm spouting some communist or socialist rhetoric. I totally stand against those forms of statism. You know, this is truly sharing amongst ourselves the harnessing of the wheel work of nature. And that's what a great scientist and inventor like Nikola Tesla was trying to do and envisioned for the world. And we're going to get to talking about, you know, people involved in technology and invention, you know, scientists. And it's a dual-edged sword, you know. And so can energy production and distribution be. Can it be done right? Yes, it can. Then would it be right livelihood? Yes, it would. But the way we're doing it now, it's harming human beings, it's harming animals, and most of all, it's harming the planet that we both rely upon for the continuation of life and the life cycle. And that is what makes it immoral. So in the way that we're producing energy today, it's wrong livelihood. If we were to truly step into an alternative, clean, sustainable, ecologically sound energy paradigm driven by the desire to better humanity and to clean up this planet, then absolutely that would be right livelihood. So this also could be one of the dual-edged swords, but most certainly the way we're doing it now is wrong livelihood. Oh, the talking heads of the media. I mean, could you imagine the place karmically that these, as Gerald Celente likes to call them, prostitutes are? You know? I mean, beautiful word for them. I mean, as David Icke calls them, the repeaters. They're the repeaters of the dark occultists behind government, blasting their worldview at humanity to mind control them. And could you imagine these immoral pieces of trash have taken that job for a paycheck, sold out their fellow brothers and sisters of humanity? Many of them are dark occultists themselves or come from dark occult families, without a doubt, without any doubt. Okay? You know, I can't remember the daughter, I can't remember her first name, the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski, the high-level think tank demon that is now gone, you know, from the Trilateral Commission. He's now burning in hell, you know, allegorically at least, you know, his soul is just, you know, recycled. But his daughter, in a statement on the news, actually like said publicly, you know, how dare Trump and his supporters try to tell people that the news media is fake and then try to offer an alternative worldview, which I could care less about Trump and his supporters because it's all part of government slavery. But she's like upset that other people are trying to compete with the entrenched media and calling them fake news. And she goes, you know, it's like they're trying to tell other people what to think and believe. And how dare they do that because that's our job. Actually came out in a television on-air report saying that she considered it their job to get in the heads of other people, to tell them what to think and believe, to tell them what to believe. I mean, you talk about some psychopathic lunatic who thinks they're God on earth. You piece of filth. Just demonic filth is what someone like that is. And that's all of these people are. They're talking head parrots, taking a report from whatever government agency or think tank, laid it on their desk, sent it to them electronically, and said, you're going to read this and you're going to sell it to the people. And you'll be paid well for doing it. I mean, I can't imagine that's one of the lowest forms of any type of employment that there is in the world. The media is largely responsible for how fucked up the brain and mindset of the human beings in this country and throughout the world are. And these people actively participated in that process of the degradation of truth and trying to blockade and stop the true distribution of truth out to the world. And there's the only word I could really use to describe that is utterly demonic. That's how far I would go to say how wrong the behavior that these people engage in is. It's as demonic and sick as the police and military's behavior, the violence that they conduct, except these people are doing it through lying, through willfully lying to people. They know that they're telling people total bullshit. They know that they're not engaged in telling truth. You're whore liars for dark occult aspects that lay behind the government. That's what you are. All the members of the mainstream press for a paycheck. I mean, there are the concept that there are special places reserved to torture people like this for eternity. You know, I would say, you know, I don't believe in that traditional conception of hell. But let me tell you something. I think that their consciousness journeys to a place upon the relinquishing of the body, which is why many of them want to become transhumanist and prolong the inevitable, you know, passing of the body. I'm telling you, what I think happens is that their consciousness is going to be shown the error of their ways for what would seem like an eternity in the space that they're going to be in the form of consciousness that they will be in. And I wouldn't want to trade that kind of karma for anything in life. For any amount of success or happiness in life, I wouldn't trade the karma that these people have coming to them. You know? So, obviously, wrong livelihood. Not right livelihood. Doing harm to others through lying. Giving people false information when they should have a moral obligation to provide information to people that they should be taking in to make informed decision making in their lives. And these people are doing the exact opposite. They're keeping people dumbed down so that they make wrong decision making in their lives, and that continues the chaos and the enslavement in our world. Now, the alternative media is, I believe, a different story. Now, other people will say, well, this spans a wide gamut, and I agree, okay? They're not all the same. There are different people with different levels of understanding. But what I think the difference maker here is they are actively trying to do their best to bring people information that they think they need to know and do their best to report on it honestly and tell the truth like legitimate journalists. I mean, I consider what I do here a form of legitimate journalism. It is talking about what's really going on in the world, but most of all, it's talking about real spirituality and getting down into an understanding of true human psychology that has led to the human condition. So I consider myself a member of the alternative media, even though some people would not describe me as such. They would say I'm more of a spiritual teacher and a person who, you know, analyzes some of the conspiratorial aspects of human history. So, you know, I am a researcher, certainly a researcher into the field of the occult. I consider myself an occult practitioner, not just a researcher, okay? And I'm a teacher of occultism and a teacher of natural law. But that all plays hand in hand with using the new style of media, which is putting information out there onto the internet in the form of this show, in the form of the podcast that this show has been in the form of for going on 10 years, okay, 9 years now. So that's what we have to understand is that the alternative media is at least making an effort to inform the population. And that's why I would consider it largely right livelihood. There are some people that do it much better than others, but I believe that most people within the alternative media are actively, willfully trying to report on things in the best way that they know how. And I hope that that would continue and the quality of it would increase. Because as I said, not all players are the same in this game. Okay? So that being said, I would say for those who are actively making an honest effort, being engaged in the alternative, the true alternative media in the service of truth and freedom is right livelihood. What can I say? You know? Talk about some of the biggest liars that have ever lived. Religionists, high-level religionists, trying to co-opt the spiritual destinies of human beings since day one. You know? You want to talk about people who came into power as a result of human origins, as a result of cosmic abandonment, as I've talked about? Look no further than religious leaders and the institutions that really, the highest level dark occult sorcerers are ultimately behind controlling the world from. You know, I've said before, people think the world's controlled from New York City, from London, you know, from Tokyo, you know, from Paris. You know, none of these things are true. The world is always controlled covertly through religious means, because the spiritual, the perversion of the destiny of the spiritual life goes hand in hand with the perversion of the, physical lives of people, the psychological and the physical. So you have to ultimately get to the spiritual corruption aspect. That game is what really is controlling the whole game. So the world's not controlled from New York, through London, through Tokyo, etc., the Beijing, you know, all those seeming places of power financially. No. The world is controlled, as I've said many, many times, from Rome, Jerusalem, and Mecca. Those are the places that are the real centers of power. And then you could say Tibet, if you want to put the Eastern traditions in with that. That would be the fourth place. But the Vatican, okay, high-level rabbis in the Judaic tradition in Jerusalem, and the high-level religious leaders in the Islamic religion in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca and Medina, but largely Mecca. That's where the world's really controlled from. Religion stands behind it all, because then the dark priest class of the world, the dark occult priest class, stands behind the ostensibly enthroned religious traditions. You want to know where the real dark priest class is at? It's in the halls of the Vatican. You know, it's in the religious centers where the highest level religious leaders in Jerusalem and Mecca are at. That's where it's all the real power is conducted. And then you want to talk about, they direct the secret societies. They direct the intelligence agencies. How tied in with the intelligence agencies the religious institutions of the world are. Tied in with the CIA, the NSA, MI5 and 6, Pakistani ISI, the Mossad out of Israel. And you can go on and on. Down into the occult orders like Skull and Bones, the think tanks, like the Club of Rome, all being directed through religious agendas and dark occult agendas ultimately. Without any doubt, if you study it and you're honest with yourself, you'll come to that same conclusion. This is the father of the control system, religion. It's all religion. You know, the mother of it that directs the emotional aspect and the desire aspect is the monetary system of what I call the unholy trinity. Religion, money, government. Government is the male child of action that controls it from the physical level. You know, and then the ostensible places of power then are Washington, D.C., with the center of government and military strength. Of course, the City of London, the center of financial control, particularly through the Rothschild banking dynasties and the other central banks they control. And then, of course, through Rome, which really acts as the center of the religious power, because the Roman Empire never fell. It just basically, went behind the scenes and works through all institutionalized government and religions. So obviously, before I move on, anybody involved in organized religion from a traditional cultural religious point of view, wrong livelihood. Because you're not telling people the truth. Religion isn't the truth. It's not real spirituality. It's a proxy for real spirituality. And a lot of what they talk about is dogma. It's proxy for the real thing. You're not giving anybody the real esoteric traditions. You're trying to get them to believe and pour money into your coffers. That's all. That's all these people are doing. And ultimately controlling their minds. It's a form of mind control. It's a form of emotional and psychological control. It's a form of monetary control through tithing and all the collections that they do. And let's face it, folks, a large portion of these people are pedophiles and pedophile protectors. And then the police and military are also pedophile protectors for them. And the judges and the politicians, etc. They all work hand in hand together. Religion and government need each other. It's one of the good lessons, allegorical lessons of Game of Thrones, even though it ended like, 5 pounds of dog shit in a 2-pound sack, by them voting in a new king, instead of just destroying the throne and leaving it be at that, which no one can seem to do. The only places it seemed to be done in was Conan the Barbarian and Harry Potter, But anyway, digressing from looking at allegorical movie traditions, these people, Game of Thrones was talking about how the state and the church need each other. They rely on each other. They're a magic arch, okay? They form a structure of strength and stability that would not be there if the other, side of the other pillar of the arch was not in place. Those two institutions have to work hand in hand. If one falls, the other will shortly fall thereafter because they're both forms of each other. Religion is really the enthroned government truly behind the scenes. And government is just a form of religion. That's all it is. It's a form of belief. That's all it really is a belief system that's not based in anything real. It's based in a belief that is just dogmatic and erroneous, meaning it's not true. It's a false belief system. So anybody involving themselves in it and propagating it is in wrong livelihood. So let's look at healthcare, medicine in general. Now, again, this one's a dual-edged sword because I would say there are ways that you can be involved in medicine/healthcare and do it in right livelihood, and then there are certainly ways that it can be harmful and damaging to people, as is the majority of healthcare in America. And that's because we have two overarching worldviews when it comes to healthcare and medicine, and that is the allopathic worldview, which is basically based on the Rockefeller protocols instituted around the turn of the last century, the 1900s. Okay, when you were wiping out naturopathic and homeopathic remedies and replacing it with the pharmaceutical industry and the surgery, the death care and surgery and pharmaceutical industries. Okay, so I would say allopathic practice is part of this destructive and harmful worldview and system that is entrenched in modern healthcare, especially government overtaken and government-driven healthcare. And a lot of it's run through government money and grant money. Pharmaceutical industry, absolutely tied in with all of that. So big pharma, plays hand in hand with the allopathic medical industry. And that's all this is a big business. It's a big industry of disease. Okay, I recommend Sonia Barrett's work called The Business of Disease, which gets into it in detail, and it's a great documentary. So what you have to do is be honest with yourself and say, is this really helping people to get better, to learn about nutrition, to learn about how to really put the things into the body that they truly need instead of selling them on pharmaceutical drugs and surgery? Because that's mostly what allopathic medicine is doing. It's treating The worldview is Newtonian. It's the Newtonian paradigm, the outdated scientific, so-called scientific paradigm of Newtonian materialism, that matter is prime, and if we just get down to the basic building blocks of matter, we're going to find the cause for everything. And this assumes one overarching wrong way of thinking, and that is that the universe and life within it is a machine. It is not a machine. It is based upon spirit, ultimately. And there are aspects of it that can work like a machine, but that doesn't mean it is a machine. That's where this conflation happens, okay? We can study things to understand their basic workings in nature, but we have to understand that their essence is not just the matter, okay? The matter is an expression of the spirit, of pure energy and consciousness. And if we understand and treat things from those levels, then we're moving into a more holistic approach to medicine, a more holistic approach to health in general. And this is known as naturopathy. Okay, some people in the past called it homeopathy, but generally we call it naturopathy now. Okay, it's treating things from a holistic, integral approach when it comes to health. Instead of being death care, it's true health care, because it's integrating mind, body, and spirit or soul with the symptoms that are presented at the physical level. But we're going deeper than the physical level to understand things at the cure. So I would say allopathic medicine, wrong livelihood. Naturopathic medicine, right livelihood, because you're truly trying not to do harm. You know, doctors were supposed to take the whole, oath of Hippocrates, the Hippocratic oath, to say, I will endeavor to do no harm to my patient, who's coming to me and trusting me with a problem that they are having with their health. I think most doctors today in the allopathic fields are doing more harm than good. They won't tell anybody any natural solutions because they can't make money from it. They just want to prescribe drugs and surgery. I'll just give an example. I'm going to just come out and say some personal information as an anecdotal example. My mother came over here and spent a little bit of time with me this past week. Not a lot of time, just less than half a day. And we got to talking, and she told me that she's developing what her primary doctor called severe arthritis, a severe arthritic condition in her knees. And she doesn't eat right, and she doesn't really take care of her body properly. I've tried to explain, the dynamics of health and nutrition to her and put her on the right path when it comes to taking care of herself. Doesn't want to do it, says she's too weak-willed, doesn't want to change her sensate taste pleasures, very, very attached to desires when it comes to that. See, this goes back to the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, okay? Will not let go of the attachments to wanting certain tastes present when she eats, and therefore is undermining her health in doing so. When she doesn't understand yet, anyway, and it's difficult to teach, someone who's very rooted in their ways, new ways of doing things when they're set in a certain way by a certain age, and that's okay. I'll still get a little upset about it. It's going to be what it is. You know what I mean? Certain things that you could do what you can, and certain things, if somebody has to develop the willpower on their own, and that's just it. That's the way that it is. So. I've been trying to tell her for years, get on turmeric. It's an excellent anti-inflammatory, and you got to take a lot of it. You can't take little, pissant, amounts of it. You got to load up on that stuff, Like if you're going to take turmeric, take, 15 turmeric pills a day, capsules, I should say, because pills conjures, pharmaceutical imagery. Take capsules of turmeric, 15 times a day. Just swallow them with a little bit of liquid throughout the course of the day. Put that in your body. It's incredible for what it will do, to your joints, for inflammation in your tissue, etc. And that's the source of all disease, is inflammation. I've been telling her that for years. Won't buy turmeric. Turmeric's cheap too. You go to a local, ethnic food store that sells Asian foods, etc., and Indian foods. Wow. You can get turmeric bulk, high quality bulk turmeric at rock bottom prices. I have a tin of turmeric in a big coffee tin, this big. And it was like it was like nothing. It was a few dollars, and I just went out to a local, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean style food market in University City here, and great selections of things that you might not find in a regular supermarket, especially in the bulk that you can get them at a place like that. But anyway, going back to the story about the difference between allopathic medicine and holistic healthcare, they won't tell her about this. Her doctors won't tell her about this. They were recommending surgery on her knees at like hundreds of thousands of dollars, because their insurance company is going to pay them very well for that. That's their main product and service. They want to sell that surgery, She goes and get a second opinion, and the other doctor says, hey, by the way, on the air, I'm like violating a family member's HIPAA rights. So, but hey, I'm going to use it as an example because I think it's a great example of, the difference between these two worldviews. So, she goes to get a second opinion, and, the second doctor says, oh, I don't agree at all. I think this is a mild case at best. It's yes, you have some arthritis there, but it's certainly not as advanced as your other doctor would have you believe, and I certainly don't recommend surgery. So, they'll even tell you completely contradictory things. But, he wanted to do injections of, certain types of pharmaceutical-grade gels into her knee. I'm like, you don't need any of that. First of all, it's not going to really be absorbed in the right places where it needs to be. It's only going to provide probably temporary relief. I was explaining to her hyaluronic acid. This is another thing that people should be very aware of and how much it will help with your joints. I could, briefly, tell you that I've had other friends that have had arthritic conditions and, had, been recommended surgery, especially in the knee area, and they started taking large amounts of hyaluronic acid and turmeric, especially if you take those in conjunction with each other, and that condition will improve radically in a short amount of time. It won't be instant or immediate, but I'm telling you, you take decent amount. I mean, you can't take the recommended dose on the bottle of capsules. You got to 8-fold that, minimum 8 times that much, because they're giving you these little tiny recommended doses. That's not how, if you're going to really load up on a supplement, you take them. You have to load up on them. So I'd like to say, if they tell you 2 capsules, take 16, times it by 8, and you'll be around the right area you need to be. Okay? So I was telling her, look into hyaluronic acid. It's not that expensive. You could buy it in bulk online. Cap it up yourself. Get a capping machine and cap it up and take it every day. Doesn't want to do it, doesn't want to swallow the pills, doesn't want to put it in smoothies. It's like you got to be willing to do the work. That's another part of it. It's not going to things aren't just going to automatically happen for us. We have to exert will. That's right effort, of that 8-fold path. So, a holistic practitioner of true holistic healthcare, naturopathy, would probably have told her about hyaluronic acid and turmeric, and probably some other supplementation, adaptogens and whatnot that she could do, or anybody in that condition can do. And that's why I consider this right livelihood. You're trying to do what is the most efficient and best for the person to alleviate the suffering or the cause of their suffering. Okay? You're not trying to do the shortcut just because you will profit the most from that. And that's why I think allopathic medicine, wrong livelihood, and holistic naturopathy is right livelihood. So, moving on from that, so-called food production. There are factory farms that are just torturing animals all day long, nonstop. And this is absolutely directly causing harm to other sentient beings. So farming of animals, wrong livelihood. We talked about this in the shows that I did on carnism versus a plant-based diet recently. And, if people can't get this from a common sense perspective, that there's a drastic difference in the sources that we can take into ourselves in the form of food, then I don't know what to tell them. Like they're cut off from their soul. That's all it really comes down to. They're cut off from empathy and compassion toward creatures that are, of less complexity than ourselves. Okay, so this is a very clear-cut one as far as I'm concerned. If you're involved in the farming of animals, it's wrong livelihood because it's directly creating harm and suffering to other sentient beings, namely animals. Okay, and it's not doing good things for the health and well-being of human beings either, with the ecological impact of factory farming and any animal farming really, and the input into the body of something that suffered in the ways that these animals do. And that's doing damage on the physical level and on the spiritual level. And I've talked about that in the past on the podcasts, the audio podcast that I did on carnism, when I went into the occult aspects of the meat diet. So you could look back into that. I believe it was around 122, 123, something like that. Anyway, there's an obvious difference in the image you just saw and the one that's on the screen now. And if you can't see that, I feel very sorry for you as a human being. And get as offended about that as you want. Because to just engage in organic farming of plant and vegetable matter is how we are intended to really grow things. And that's what we're intended to eat as human beings. So I would say that, natural plant-based farming practices are right livelihood as compared with especially factory farming practices and, animal abuse that takes place on farms throughout the world. I would certainly consider wrong livelihood. And again, we have to just stop lying to ourselves and apply very simple moral principles from a fundamental first principles philosophical perspective. When we do that honestly, common sense can just very easily be applied to these situations, and we can know the difference. Which one is right livelihood? Which one is wrong livelihood? It isn't that hard, folks. We want to overcomplicate it and overcomplexify it, and that's what really all forms of evil really want to do. It's one of the methods of mind control is obfuscation and complexification. Anything that's bad for us really wants to obfuscate the issue and make it way more complex, overly complexify it so that it, creates a mesmerizing of the brain, a hypnotism, if you will. And, what is right and what is common sense is infinitely elegant and infinitely less complex. It's simplistic. We know it in our heart. You can't overthink it with the mind. You have to apply heart-based intelligence, which is what actually the topic was. I should have mentioned on the Wizard Factory podcast that I did. Heart-based intelligence as a true part of holistic intelligence and the understanding and application of natural law. And we have to apply heart-based intelligence when it comes to understanding which daily work practices are right livelihood and which are not. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, that's not hard to do. So moving on from that, education, teaching, many different methods of doing it. But, if people are going to, take part in the outcome-based education system that we have here in the United States and really throughout most of the world, it's doing a lot of harm to young people because it's putting them through a ringer of indoctrination instead of truly leading them out of darkness, which is what true education through the classical liberal arts methodology known as the trivium is supposed to do. But most teachers aren't doing that in the world. They're engaged in following a curriculum to get a paycheck, pumping out socialist and often outright communist propaganda in many cases. They are involved in brainwashing techniques. They are involved in just going along to get a paycheck, instead of really trying to reach the minds and lives and hearts of the students that they are charged to teach and to bring up to a higher level of understanding. And in that sense, the educational system has been an abject failure, the formal education system. And that's why I would say As much as this may pain people to hear, most people in the formal, public state-run education system are not in right livelihood. That's a hard one for most people to hear and to accept. But when you know how overtaken it is by the government, by forces that are at work inside of it, corrupting it, the answer is not to keep putting our effort toward these decaying, dead systems. It's to start building new systems to really do what these ones were intended to do ostensibly, but have failed miserably. And that's why I think that homeschooling is one of the noble professions and occupations I'm talking about. And most people will receive no money for that. But alternative methods of teaching, alternative schooling, okay? There are different forms of schooling and unschooling coming up here in the United States, especially, that are gaining a lot of traction. Those type of teachers I would also consider engaged in a noble profession. So teachers who are truly trying to be educators of the young and to teach them how to think, not just what to think, but how to think and how to come to conclusions on their own, and engage in critical thinking skills and in the trivium process of truth discovery. We should value teachers like that. And I think conscious parenting is a big part of this. You want to talk about the most important job that there is, and what could be the most noble. It's being a parent, okay? A conscious parent, all right? While that's a path that I have not, chosen to put in place for myself in this lifetime, I highly respect parents who truly do their job as parents to educate and truly raise their children in a moral capacity. There's no more noble job or profession than that, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so those are the two distinct roles in the different forms of education: being a indoctrinator, which is not right livelihood, and just going along to get along for a paycheck, and then being a true educator, which we need many, many more of, which is right livelihood. I'd put librarians in that. Obviously, there's a lot of books that are untrue in a library, many that are. But librarians can, if they act in the right capacity, direct people to reading the right books or helping them find the right ones. So I have kind of a very deep respect for books and collections of books built down deep into my DNA, So this is a profession that I've often wanted to be involved in. It's something that if I didn't have to do what I do here, from a moral obligation perspective with what on earth is happening, I might pursue a career in, because I want to be around books. I would love to work in a bookstore. I would love to be a librarian of some kind. I feel like I have that in the essence of my ancestry and my DNA. And it's carried over, obviously, into this lifetime with the amount of books and knowledge that comes with them that I have accrued. So I consider librarians right livelihood. Tech careers or careers in the IT industry, as I just put out an ad seeking help, it's a dual-edged sword. It depends on what you're doing it for. You want to go and work for somebody like Lockheed Martin, or other defense contractors, supporting the government and the military and helping them drop bombs on foreign countries that didn't harm us, then I'm going to say you're not in right livelihood. But, if you take a career in IT and you learn, web technologies or programming, and you get involved in the battle to get information out there to people, help do the great work, that's absolutely a noble profession. I did IT and was engaged in wrong livelihood in it, but because the institution that I worked for, and some was right livelihood and some was wrong. When I recognized the institutions that I was working for were just really doing a lot of harm to animals, I stepped away from that, IT work that was, part of Penn's research in their School of Medicine, because I was employed there in the past. So, the whole tech sector can definitely be both wrong livelihood and right livelihood, depending on who you're working for and what the purpose of the work is. And again, common sense and natural law principles have to be applied to determine which, jobs in the IT field are within right livelihood and which you should steer clear from. Science as well. It's very similar, to the tech field. Okay, so some scientists can be engaging in things that are truly moving humanity forward, and that should be the goal of science and invention. It should have as its goal, as Tesla said, the betterment of humanity. And if it doesn't have that as its main goal, it is only a perversion of itself. So, scientists can be involved depending on what they're doing and what institution they happen to be working for. They could be engaged in right livelihood, or they could be doing things, covertly for the government, intelligence agencies, and really doing harmful things to people, the environment, animals, etc. So again, science is a dual-edged sword. It's knowledge. Again, that's where the word science comes from the Latin verb sciere, which means to know or to understand. When we develop knowledge about how things work in the natural world, we have to make a decision through our conscience, through our knowledge of whether something is right or wrong, because it either doesn't cause harm or does cause harm, whether what we're using it for is right action, and therefore whether we are engaged in right livelihood. So science is another one of those dual-edged swords. Inventors, this is the last one that I really want to get into. Invention is another thing that I think maybe if I had some mentoring and pursued a slightly different educational path, I may have tried my hand at. I think I have a mind for it, or maybe could have developed a mind for it. However, I don't want to invent anything that's just going to be crushed, by the system of slavery that's in place, which is why I think, people making patents and, basically handing the technology to the government through the patent system is just, it's unconscionable. So, but there are inventors who were really trying, like Stan Meyer pictured here, who built the water fuel cell for cars. Basically, it was a water splitter that split the water molecule into its constituent elements, hydrogen and oxygen, powered the car with a hydrogen-based cell, and then output oxygen, rich oxygen, into the environment as its quote-unquote waste product. I mean, you talk about a genius. This man was poisoned to death in a restaurant, basically clasping his throat and collapsing while saying, "I'm poisoned." And then they rule it like natural causes from a heart attack. Yeah, because the poison stopped his heart. It wasn't a heart attack, it was poisoning, which caused cardiac arrest, meaning the stoppage of the heart. Yeah. The guy who invented a car that will run on water invented this, the battery that would fuel any car on water alone. Okay? That's what happens to people like that. So, inventors can be a very noble profession. Okay? I consider if they're doing it like someone like Stan Meyer was doing it for the right reasons, for the uplift and betterment of humanity through the technology, I consider that right livelihood and an outrightly noble profession. And I did forget two more professions. And guess what, folks? I consider them very noble professions, and that is plumbing and sanitation. I know that's going to be a big shock for some people, okay? I generally consider them almost exclusively right livelihood professions, okay? Do you realize how much plumbers and sanitation workers have contributed to the health of human beings and the general longevity of human beings and the better quality of life of human beings? If we as human beings did not have people to engage in this work, human beings would be back where they were in the Dark Ages during the bubonic plague, okay? We would have literal disease and plagues around every corner. Plumbers and sanitation workers have done more to increase the health and well-being of human beings, probably more than any class of people in human history, including teachers, including so-called educators, okay? Because they're giving them the physical conditions to be able to live unbarraged by continual disease so that they can learn and improve their mind and therefore improve their soul. So this is actually a job, people look down on jobs like this. No way. I consider them practically noble professions. okay? And it's like something like literally, if we honestly, I'm saying this honestly, like if we solved the human condition of slavery and we were actually free, living in a state of anarchy and just, engaging in voluntary behavior and dealing with the psychopaths that were left in the world that we would have to deal with, but there was no ruling class, and we actually built an anarchic society. In all honesty, folks, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to paint, I'm going to garden, and I'd probably take a job as a sanitation worker. Seriously. Not joking, not a joke, not laughing about it at all, okay? I find what they do to be honorable. Okay? And again, plumbers and sanitation workers, if we didn't have them, you would not even imagine what our society would look like, especially in urban environments. Good God is all I have to say. So I'd say that these two categories of laborers that I'm mentioning here as an example, plumbers and sanitation, right livelihood. And I think I'll end on just talking about what the solution to wrong livelihood is. Because this is what people will say, well, what are we supposed to do if we're in the fields that you talk about as being wrong livelihood? And again, there's millions of other fields and professions that we didn't talk about here today. I've probably had, profound oversights that I should have included but didn't. But there's only so much time on every show, okay? So this is the most difficult pill to swallow, folks. And listen up real good, okay? Clean your ears out and listen really well to what I'm about to say, because this is the takeaway from all of it. The most difficult thing that most people do not want to hear or accept, and they don't want to tell the truth to themselves about it, when it comes to being out of alignment with right livelihood, is that they should stop doing the harm-causing occupation immediately, no matter what the short-term cost may be for them or their immediate family members. I'm going to read that again because it's so profoundly important to understand. The most difficult thing that most people do not want to hear regarding this whole topic we've been talking about today of right livelihood. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to tell the truth to themselves about it. When it comes to being out of alignment with right livelihood, the solution is they should stop doing the harm-causing occupation immediately, no matter what the short-term cost may be for them or their immediate family members. And I fully understand and appreciate what I am saying and asking in full consciousness and awareness of what I am saying and asking of people. That means you may have to suffer in the short term, but you will no longer be harming others. You will be taking the karmic debt of what you have already done through the short-term suffering. But the long-term karmic debt will turn your life around for the better. You don't need to believe that. The only leap of faith that you need to take is to do it. And you'll see. And you'll know that what I'm telling you is the truth. This is a pill that no one wants to swallow, but it is absolutely true nonetheless. The solution is to quit the job that is causing harm and find work that is in alignment with morality under natural law. And there is no shortage of those occupations or jobs. They're everywhere around us. We can do something that is not something that is causing harm or is involved in a institution that is causing direct or indirect harm to other human beings or animals or the environment. It is possible. Many people do it on a daily basis. So this is a meme here when you want to quit your job because you know it's not the right thing to be doing, but you know that you need money to survive. No one's saying that this is easy. It can be very difficult. All I'm telling you is it's the right thing to do, and if you do it, you will see your life turn around for the better. Perhaps not in the immediate short term, because you're going to have to take the brunt of the karmic debt that is coming your way, whether you like that or not, or want it or not. And that may be the suffering that you have to go through in the short term to quit that job and maybe not have the resources that you need. And you might need to struggle, and your family may even need to struggle. And I'm telling you, take that. Accept that. Directly telling you That's a better choice than what you will be doing to your soul long term if you continue to do the harmful job that you're in that is not in alignment with right livelihood. When you're in wrong livelihood, that could be one of the most powerful phrases that a human being can ever speak. I quit. Quit your harmful job. Quit your cult. Quit the thing that is responsible for causing harm to other human beings, to animals, to the environment, and most of all, to your own soul. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal part of the presentation material for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. This was episode number 211. If you have enjoyed and appreciate and have found value in what I present here on What on Earth is Happening, please visit the What on Earth is Happening donation gifts area on my website by clicking on the gifts tab. That will take you to gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. You can get hard copies of all of my presentations on the site. There are also t-shirts, flash drives, coasters, DVDs, keychains, buttons, stickers, just a lot of memorabilia that you can take a look at for yourself, or maybe get as a gift for a friend or a family member to help wake them up. So also, if you want to go further in your own knowledge, and this is what I hope many more people will continue to do. Many people have been taking me up on this offer. I hope it continues well into the future and even increases in number. Take me up on the ARC Drive offer. The ARC is known as the Amazing Repository of Knowledge. It is a 1 terabyte external hard drive that you plug into any computer, and years and years and years of research data that I downloaded from the internet to come to the understanding that I have come to here at What on Earth is Happening in the work that I do is aggregated and copied onto this 1 terabyte hard drive that you provide to me, and then I ship it back to you full of 1 terabyte. That's 1,000 gigabytes of data of the research that I took in, the best research that I took in to come to the level of understanding that I have come to regarding what is taking place in our world and in the human condition. So you can get the shipping instructions for the ARC drive by going to whatonearthishappening.com/ARC, A-R-K, or you could just click the ARC tab on the tab section at the top of the whatonearthishappening.com website. And finally, if you want to simply make a straight donation to the cause of What on Earth is Happening, we take donations here in 10 different ways. You can use PayPal, or you could become a Patreon subscriber. I've gotten many Patreon followers, and I'm very glad to see that. I thank my Patreon supporters, the people who have made pledges on a monthly basis to What on Earth is Happening. That is so helping. It's really helping with my daily living here. It's helping with, food costs and bill payments and things like that. It's directly helping in my personal life, which is what I'd like to dedicate that whole Patreon aspect for, whereas other donations will go right to the work that we do here at What on Earth is Happening. If people continue to subscribe and pledge to Patreon, I'd love to see that. Thank you so much to all the people who have offered very generous donations and support. There's cryptocurrency options to donate on the website. You could do it the old-fashioned way through and thank you for all the people who have donated cryptocurrency. I love seeing that form of competition to the Federal Reserve System come into play, and people use that toward the great work. So thank you to people who have donated that way. And another method is you could click on the donate supplies image there on the right. That will take you to our Amazon wish list. And occasionally I will put up technology items that we require for daily operation here at What on Earth is Happening. So you could buy that and ship the technology item directly to me, so you know how your donation was spent toward the cause. You know that you're getting an item that we are using here on a daily basis to do this show and to do all the other ancillary operations for What on Earth is Happening here at my home studio and headquarters and office. So thank you to everyone who has generously donated to What on Earth is Happening. We appreciate it so much. I and the whole staff appreciate your generosity, so thank you. And pay it forward by helping people to learn and understand this information, by speaking it and putting them on to this information whenever and wherever you can. So thank you so much, and let's move on to our calls. We're going to take some calls till the end of the show, and the topic is going to be right livelihood. I'd prefer, mostly prefer staying with the topic if we can. If people really want to bring up something else, that's not out of bounds. You can bring up whatever you want, but I generally like to field questions if we can on the concept of right livelihood today. So was making me aware that we have a great addition in the What on Earth is Happening call room, and it's Vinny Eastwood. I very much consider Vinny Eastwood a peer. I consider him a friend. I consider him someone who is engaged in right livelihood and who has seen in practice the things that I've talked about here on this show today. I believe that's maybe what brought him into the room. So I'm going to go to him first as a special caller. Vinny Eastwood, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome to the show, my friend. So Vinny, you need to unmute yourself in Discord. I've unmuted you at the server end. Hopefully you're there. I'm seeing that you're still muted yourself. So let's try, just look for the unmute. There you go. There it is. Vinny, welcome. It's great to see you in the call-in room. We're working on that. I may be implementing a custom solution. I have a couple of developers that are helping with that task. We may be implementing a simple web-based solution without all the complexity of Discord, and that may be coming. It's in the alpha stages of testing right now, so it's not going to be here for a few weeks, but we may be implementing a new, very simple call system that works right through your web browser and makes it easier for me to manage calls on the back end as well. So, hopefully that will clear up some of the technological confusion that is often happening with Discord. But I thank you for persisting through it and being part of the show today.
Well, the other part of it is to have all this technical knowledge, you need to know how to work all of your gear, right? And so at the moment, I've got Discord, I've got Loopback, I've got OBS, I've got streaming, I've got recording, and various other tweaks and things like that. I've got a mixing board, I've got a microphone, and guess what? All of these things were either free or donated to me by listeners, right? And
I mean, it's phenomenal. Like, you realize how much people are willing to put some of their resources where their understanding is and help support a cause. And that is because you were generous with your time and your knowledge, and you did the work, and you dedicated your life to trying to tell the truth to people and put that knowledge out there. So the universe returned that in the form of generosity that was displayed to you from other people, that you brought value to their lives. And that's how this dynamic works.
yeah, it's called, I call it social kitty. All right, and it works in a very literal sense, whereby if you do good work for society, I had a realization the other day. You know how everybody comes up to you, Mark, and they say, keep up the good work.
Yes.
And it didn't actually occur to me until the other day what keep up the good work actually means. The
And
great
what's that?
work.
Yes.
The great, the
That's
trivial,
right.
right?
That's
So,
right.
when people tell you to keep up the good work, what they're doing is they're acknowledging the fact that you've asked the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and you understand something, so that if somebody else questions you and asks you the who, what, when, where, how, you're able to answer that, and now you have adopted the mode of the teacher. And essentially, that's what people are saying when they say keep up the good work. They mean keep teaching people the things that you're teaching them, because if you don't, society itself suffers. That is why it is the good work, and that's why you have to keep it up.
Persistence is a huge part of it. You may not see the dividends pay immediately. It's something that you have to continue to do. It's like anything else. You go to the gym one day, you're not going to you know, lose tons of weight and be in perfect peak physical condition one day. You have to habituate it. You have to do it continuously. You get onto a healthy diet. You don't do that for a week and then stop. You habituate it. You make it part of your daily routine. It's the same thing with doing the work. It's the same thing with being in right livelihood. It's something that you have to make part of the whole integral makeup of your life and continue to do it with persistence. It's a great point that you're making there, Vinny.
Well, and that was another thing that I reminded me of, is that all the knowledge that I've been given has been given to me by my elders, and a lot of the people that have come on the show. I mean, one of my listeners asked me the other day, "How do you pick all the people that come on your show?" And I say, "I don't. My listeners do. They send me hey, Vinny, interview this guy, interview that guy. Do I investigate who they are before I interview them? No. And in fact, if I know who they are and I have followed their work and stuff like that, it complicates the situation, because I get this kind of fawning sort of little girl with pigtails type of mentality, like, oh my God, I'm talking to somebody I really love, and it can often be uncomfortable for people, and I think that it's a hell of a lot more easy to get to know someone by asking them, tell me who you are and what it is you do, than it is by investigating the stuff that they've done, because often the only person who would truly understand who they are and what they do is the person you're talking to. And so when you make assumptions and deductions about, oh, you must think this or you must do that, or whatever, you get out of kilter, and that makes it very difficult to forge a relationship. And my idea behind a talk radio interview is to forge a relationship probably within about 30 seconds. I want to forge a relationship with either a listener or a guest, or something of that nature, because that's all the attention span really allows for in our modern society. You have to be open, you have to be honest, and you really have to go straight for the throat of the issues. Otherwise, you're meandering BS bollocks. And
I think that comes off very clearly as well to the viewing or listening audience. Yeah. If they have any, general deductive reasoning and powers of intuition, they're going to come to an accurate conclusion whether someone is the real deal or whether they're fake fairly quickly. And like you said, time only allows, in the type of thing that we do, talking to people, where we have to kind of, be honest and open enough to get into that space where we form a quick connection with the other person, and then really hear what they're saying and then be able to respond to it. So, a big part of that is that, basic respect for self and the other, and that is part of what we talked about here today. And I just want to say that I respect the work that you have done, and I consider you an inspiration in the great work, because you have been doing this for such a long time. You've been persistent with it. You're doing it through, donations, funding it, and all of this I consider is the right way of going about doing this type of work. So, I want to personally thank you for what you've been doing. And, I want to, direct my listening audience to say that this is an example of how someone can get involved and do the great work. Follow Vinny's work. Look at, all the work that he has done in the past. It's a tremendous, incredible body of work. And, he's still at it and doing it and persisting with it. We all take certain amounts of time off to rest and rejuvenate, but always back at it and doing it to the best of his ability. So, Vinny, I want to say that, I really consider you an example of right livelihood, and would direct my viewing audience to check out your work and understand that's really what right livelihood through the alternative media is all about.
I think you're correct in saying that, because there's right livelihood in media and then wrong livelihood in media. And it's good because it comes full circle with what I was just about to say next, is that I was having a conversation with a listener and I considered what my work to be BS. All right, and what I mean by that is there are works that are real. Okay, they actually manifest things in the three-dimensional realm. They actually do physically exist. Somebody built a bridge. Somebody built a home. Somebody built a cell phone tower, or something like that. These are things that are actually manifested into physical reality. These are what I call the people who do the real work, without which all of these pieces of technology and everything like that we're using wouldn't exist. All the people that are building the servers and the systems and doing all the background work, the real work, right? Whereas everybody else has been doing BS work. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that BS is bad, because every single human being alive requires at least a little bit of BS to survive. All right. And what I mean by that is the entertainments that we choose to absorb, whether it be Game of Thrones or the latest Avengers,
Sure.
or whatever. These things are BS. They don't
Yes.
actually exist.
In
They
reality,
are
yes.
in reality they're a physical augmentation. They don't actually change anything in the physical realm. And it reminded me of what an old Zen master said. He said, "Before enlightenment, you must chop wood and carry water. And after enlightenment, you must
You must
chop
chop
wood
wood
and
and carry
carry
water.
water."
Yeah.
Because just because you learn something new, just because you are entertained for a bit, doesn't mean it actually makes any difference. It is your actions based upon the BS. How do you react to this BS? Is it good BS that fills you full of hope and a sense of imagination to be able to go and create new things? Or is it BS that makes you feel afraid and drawn and insular and make you kill yourself eventually after taking too many pharmaceutical drugs? You see, there's
Right.
good BS and there's bad BS. And as I always say, never underestimate a man's ability to play mind games with himself and come off the winner.
That's right. And that's what part of this is all about, is it's that first step of initiation. The true beginning of the spiritual journey is stop lying to yourself above all else. Yes, stop lying to other people, but we have to first stop lying to ourselves. That's part of self-respect. And this is what too few people are willing to do. Too many continue to tell themselves the whole BS story about how the job that they're doing is necessary and right, and it's all justifications. None of it holds any real weight when it comes to objective morality and natural law. So I think that we do need a certain amount of perhaps you could call it distraction and or lightheartedness, because the great work can be very heavy at many times, and if you try to just continue nonstop, it can burn you out. So we all have to have our little distractions and little times that we engage in some lightheartedness and or even outright fantasy. But then we come back down to the ground where the work is still there for us to do, and we have to come back somewhat rejuvenated and renewed from that little temporary distraction to continue to do it to the best of our ability. And as I said again, I consider you a peer in that work. So thank you for the work that you've done, and I want to thank you for the insights that you brought to the table today as a caller.
Well, this is the reason I was listening to your show today, Mark, is I'm in the middle of my holiday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just had exactly 1 week off. And then I see Mark Passio's live, and I just happened to be away.
That's great. Very fortuitous timing. That's what synchronicities are all about. Vinny, I want to say thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your holiday.
All right, thanks, Mark. And by the way, today is Queen's birthday weekend, so for those of us in the former British colonies, as if we're not already, I want people to remember one thing that's very, very important. We're all still slaves of the British Empire.
That's
okay?
right.
Because they created the banking system and the court system, and nary a person can escape from that reality.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a colony or if you're not in a colony, you still belong to the colonials. And today is Queen's birthday weekend, and I was told out this this little meme. It's got the Queen, with her little smile and her little wave. This Happy Queen's birthday weekend, slaves.
Oh
You
my
know?
God. You imagine people still having respect for royalty. Amazing. It's the year 2019 going on 2020, and they still think royalty is a good thing.
Well, it's everybody's thought royalty was a good thing for a long time because everybody was raised on royal education and served in the royal army and held high standing in the royal courts. And they basically said that, hey, if you put royal in the name of anything, it suddenly becomes so much better than it actually is. It's a basic principle of scamming.
And we have to throw off that feudal colonialism and have a real, true revolution in consciousness worldwide. That's what really is very much necessary. And I think that's why more people have to get involved in the great work and become a real educator and a real teacher and a true journalist, as I consider that's what you do, Vinny. And, if more people stepped up into that role of being a truth teller and doing it fearlessly, they'd see how the quality of their lives would improve and how the universe would reward them for that work long term.
I am so sorry to still keep yammering on, but there's so many important issues that, like, for example, after the Christchurch mosque massacre happened, I'm so far the only alternative journalist who's actually been to Christchurch, interviewed the president of the mosque, interviewed one of the survivors from the and gotten some people to do probable video analysis and things like that. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
It's more like I'm not talking loud enough. Okay, so the question is, what's happening down here in New Zealand directly after this Christchurch mosque massacre? And what's actually happening is they're trying to take the guns off of everybody. Like, they're turning up to people who work for the New Zealand military at 2 o'clock in the morning and taking their weapons off them, that kind of thing, right? Without a member of parliament or justice of the peace present, which is what you have to do to comply with the law here. And that's under New Zealand law, specifically to prevent the case where the military people might start shooting the police who are unlawfully coming onto their property and trying to seize their firearms and things of that nature in some kind of insurrectionist incident. It's kind of like posse comitatus, but in reverse. And nowadays we've got this massive net censorship going. Like, I can't use the word false flag in any of my video titles, otherwise they get they get flagged automatically, and I've got maybe another 18 days. That's why I'm actually coming off of my holiday on the 18th, because I had all of these flags and things like that, and if I got one more, I'd be dead. I'd lose my entire channel. So
this is the point we're at.
I got censored in real time. Never happened to me before, Mark. On the day after the shooting, I went live with Ollie.
I saw that episode. I saw that. Yes.
And man, that's never happened to me before. Never happened to Ollie before. I've been doing this 10 years. He's been doing it 25.
Yeah, this is them practicing or putting into a beta phase the actual artificial intelligence algorithm for certain things they don't want said. I believe that's what's really going on, behind the scenes at their networks.
Absolutely, and there's also the physical chilling effect. I've been visited by the cops 5 times in inside of 2 weeks
for talking on the internet airwaves. Imagine this. Imagine.
One of my listeners, he slammed $1,200 in cash down on my thing, and he says, "Vinny, I want you to go to Christchurch. I want you to get the story down there." I was like, "Well, I'm really afraid to do this." He's like, "Why are you afraid to do this?" He says, "Because it's going into the Lion's Den 2 weeks after it frickin' happened. What do you think is going to happen?"
Right.
So I do announce on air that I'm raising money to go down there and that kind of thing. Needed a new phone to do the live streams, the whole thing, and then all of a sudden the cops turn up at my door. And I'm like, okay, better put my weed away really quickly. Let's put that in there. Hey, how you doing? Would you like a hug? No. What about you? Would you like a hug? No. Okay. It's just I come at them all chipper and cheery and things like that. Even though meanwhile my heart's going, and it's absolutely terrifying, because when they turn up, not once, not twice, but 3, 4, 5 times, you start to get a message beyond what they told you. And you know what they told me? Nothing. They told me absolutely nothing. They didn't ask any questions. He'll like just say hi. and that's like, ooh, that's incredible intimidation tactics, right? Because they probably know that I'm a journalist and YouTuber and all of that
Sure.
kind of stuff. So anything they say or anything they do is probably going to get spread throughout the social media. So what do they say and what do? They do nothing and say nothing. All right. All they do is just turn up.
Yeah,
at the
just
end
trying
of
to
the-
intimidate the viewing and listening audience, as if to say, don't speak out or you'll be paid a visit too, We can't back down to
that's
that.
right.
More people have to just stand up to this, tell these people, you're not going to shut down freedom of speech. You're not going to shut down, let's put it this way. They're not shutting down freedom of speech without a full-scale worldwide war. It's not going to happen. It's certainly not happening here in America. And if they want to try it here in America, you're going to get a war that is going to spill over into every other country of the world. That's what they're going to have to do. Forget about even ideologically fighting it. Like, we'll ideologically fight it, but they keep pressing the issue and pressing the issue and pressing the issue. I guarantee you, they will not avoid the powder keg of America exploding in their face. It will not happen without bloodshed. That's within their power to stop what they're doing. But when it comes to the censorship issue, and I'll keep repeating this just about every week, if it's pressed and it's pressed to its full conclusion, they're going to have a war that there's absolutely no possible way that they can win. A physical hot war, not a war of ideologies. They're going to have a physical hot shooting war on their hands that they're not going to be able to unexplode the bomb that is going to explode in their face. And they will have caused it. So
Yep,
maybe that's what they want. Maybe they just, they're like the bully in a school that is begging to be punched in the face as hard as the person who's been, trying to withhold their anger at their bad behavior doesn't want to do, but eventually they crack them in the face and break their jaw and shatter their nose all over their face. That's what's going to happen with them poking the whole of America with the stick. It's because they're not going to be able to control what result. I'm trying to explain to people what I know to be a fact. A lot of people don't know about the underground American culture of weapons ownership because most of the world doesn't engage in it and doesn't see it. And I'm trying to explain to people, take every sports fan in the world, triple that number, and then quadruple the number of guns and put them in those people's hands. And that's what you have in America. And then you're going to try to shut down their freedom of speech. So, there's this video of this, heavy set kid being bullied by a little thin kid. I guess he's calling him fat and poking at him, and he starts actually hitting him. And the big kid's using so much restraint because he's 3 times bigger than this little skinny runt punk in this video. Maybe I'll post it with the podcast. And finally the kid just snaps, picks up, grabs the kid in a bear hug, picks him up, turns him upside down, and literally almost pile drives him into the ground, practically on his neck or in his head. Obviously his leg gets really messed up. I mean, he slams him to the ground harder than a professional wrestler would, fake, slam, not really attempting to hurt their, opponent where the ending is rigged, but I mean, he slams him on concrete the way a wrestler would, slam somebody on a mat that has a lot of padding and give to it, I mean, with full force, and it's I think the young kid got off easy, walking away with maybe a broken bone or two and, a little bit of a concussion, it's that's what they are literally trying to do to America. And, the thing is a lot of people think it's such a bad thing to say, if you don't stop, it's going to come to a physical fight. I'll tell any politician that to their face. I'll tell any cop that to their face. I'll tell any judge that to their face. I'll tell any lawyer that to their face, because they're in the wrong. I'm standing in the right. The people who don't want their rights taken and abused are standing in the right. Freedom of speech is the right side of history. The censorship of the freedom of speech is the wrong side of history. And anybody that would support that, they're not only in the wrong side of history, they're soul dead, sick, psychopathic, lunatic people who think they are God in this world, and they're going to exactly find out how much they're not God. And it's not tough talk. It's not picking a fight. It's telling people that when they want to bring the fight by trying to stop freedom of speech, you've closed down the avenue for the communication of truth, and that's going to lead to a hot war, and it's going to be a war you're not going to win. I don't care. You could have every army in the world at your beck and call. To win, quote unquote, you're going to have to saturation hydrogen bomb the earth. To defeat the American public, that's what you'll have to do. And then there won't be any winners because you'll have no slaves to command. So I say, if we can't do it ideologically, I'm okay with pushing it to that. I'll just come out and just be as extreme as possible. I would be fine, perfectly fine. It would be a moral, just war. And absolutely, there is such a thing as a moral, just war fought by the people who organize into militias. To stop that kind of a fighting force and the numbers that are here in America, you would have to drop hydrogen bombs on the entire surface of the country, and you wouldn't get everybody. You'd have to do it pretty much to the whole planet, and doing that would basically cause a nuclear winter on the whole planet anyway. So you would show people how much of a psychopath you are by trying to maintain control to that level. And you'd wipe out your slave population anyway, so slavery would be ended and you'd have to reset the slavery system anyway. So I'm okay with it being pushed that far. I don't fear that eventuality or that result. I don't fear it. A lot of people think it wouldn't go down that way because they don't understand the actual numbers. They don't have an accurate understanding of what exists here in America as far as weaponry is concerned. They have zero understanding of it. None whatsoever.
That's exactly what Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said. Oh, I just don't understand America. Why don't they just give up their guns all of a sudden? And it's because, honey, you're the Prime Minister of a frickin' colony, okay, that didn't rebel successfully against the crown, okay? Right. That's what you don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to fight for something. And now I have been in my life, and probably still am today to a certain extent, a real asshole. Okay? And the thing about that is I've been punched in the face many, many times. Many times. But every time it was for a different reason. So I sort of like run through the gamut of getting punched in the face for different reason after different reason after different reason. And each time getting punched in the face, I learned not to do that one particular thing. So I've improved somewhat. And I'm happy to say that for the last 10 years, I have not been punched in the face once because I've figured out what I was doing wrong. And it's just like Mark said, you know, if you come into accordance with natural law, a whole bunch of bad things that could happen to you won't frickin' happen to you.
That's right. That's right. And see, we have to stand in solidarity with the members of the alternative media. We have to say we're not going to take this censorship. It doesn't matter if they censor somebody I don't agree with. I would fight for their right to continue to say what I don't agree with. Like, I don't think that they should be censoring flat earth videos. I don't agree with it, but I don't think it should be censored. I think that should be at least out there for people's consideration if they want to click on it and view it and try to gain an understanding of what is being said, whether they agree with it or not. You know, I think religious stuff, whether I agree with it or not, that's freedom of speech. You should be able to put out there what you want to put out there, as long as you're not advocating for harm being done to other people. You know, I'm talking about self-defensive rights when people are doing harm to our bodies and our freedom. You know, don't expect people here in America to take that nonsense, because they'll take it to a certain extent. But when it becomes uncomfortable enough for them, you'll see that eventually, again, the powder keg that is America will detonate like a bomb first. It will happen here first, more likely than not, and then other countries will follow the example. They're waiting for us to start the second American Revolution worldwide, you know? And I think, you know, I don't want it to come to it having to be done like that. I think that will inevitably prolong it and delay it, and we'll have to do it again at some other point in consciousness. I think that if we do it in consciousness, if we do it the right way, if we do it through an understanding of what right and wrong are, we won't have to go through that dark night of the soul for the vast majority of the human population in the form of bloodshed. I would much rather do it through understanding.
This is something I wanted to ask you as well, because of me being punched in the face many times, in retrospect, probably for good reasons. What is the point where you can actually just lash out to someone physically when they haven't actually physically lashed out at you? That kind of thing. Because one of my mates, Barack, he's got this dude who comes around to his place, and every now and again he's had to actually use physical force to get him off the freaking property. The guy hasn't committed any violence or anything like that.
Yeah, but if somebody's on your property and you tell them to leave, that's an act of aggression as far as I'm concerned. If I tell someone to leave my home and they don't, that's an act of aggression. That means you're implying that violence could be started at any time because you're not leaving something that you don't own, And I would say if you're on your private property and someone tells you I'm not leaving, then it's on. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I wouldn't tolerate that. If I ask somebody to leave and they refuse to leave, I would lay hands on them. So I think that's totally in keeping with natural law as well, because that's a violation of your rights in your own property. That's called trespass. Once you're asked to leave a place, when you're made aware this isn't your space, this is my space, and I own this area, or I'm living here and this is where I live, and I'm asking you to leave, and they don't, that's called trespass, and that's a transgression against your natural law right to remain secure in your living space. So that's where I would say that comes into play. In a public space, I would say, only ever respond to a physical act of aggression and don't begin it. But I think in your own property, when someone refuses to leave, that is the initiation of a physical act of aggression. Just by remaining there is a physical act of aggression.
Well, my cause of it is I would probably be a much worse person if I hadn't been violently attacked. But I'm not sure if that's the best way to teach people, is to just violently attack them whenever they displease you or do something annoying.
No, certainly not. Certainly not just with words. But again, in the example you were giving there with your friend, if it's his private space and someone has refused to leave, that's definitely a violation of your natural law rights in your own property. So, that's one example. I would say a physical, strike doesn't have to happen, but you have the right to physically remove somebody. You could try to do it with the least amount of force possible, but in all honesty, I would say it's up to the person who's being aggressed upon then to determine what amount of force they'd have to exert.
Yeah, and I think maybe having experience in that kind of thing. I mean, you grew up in the mean streets, didn't you, Mark? You've seen some
not
shit,
really.
No?
I would say that there were, it was not a terrible neighborhood where I grew up, so there was not a whole lot of physical street violence, but I've seen some of it, and had to defend myself in some cases. I've seen some things that there were repercussions due to certain organized crime operations taking place where people had crossed some other people in organized crime, and I've seen some physical things go down where you knew it was something involved in organized crime and somebody took a very, very bad beating. So that's about the extent that I've seen it here in South Philadelphia. I haven't directly seen a whole lot of street violence. In some places you had to know, don't walk through this area because it's controlled by certain people who are engaged in drug activity, etc. And so you just steered clear of certain areas. That's gotten somewhat better, and the city's cleaned up in that regard, but there are still areas that I would say you would know this isn't going to be safe, or you might be accosted if you walk alone open at night. That's why in general, if I'm walking out in public, I'm carrying a gun. I carry pretty much every day where I go. So if anything were to occur, even though generally it's perfectly safe and people generally treat each other pretty well, but if there were a situation, I don't want to be caught with my pants down. I want to be ready for it. That's what preparation and preparedness is. So that's why I think everybody should be armed. I personally think everybody should have the ability to stop a violent attack with whatever weapon they choose by carrying that with them wherever they go. I think there should be no restrictions on carrying weaponry of any kind. That's our natural human right. And people can't understand that. From a lot of their perspective, they don't see that as being peaceful. There's no aggression. When I walk on the street with a firearm, there's no aggression taking place on my part. I would not initiate aggression. It is there to respond to an act of potentially deadly aggression. That's what it's there for. And I would try to use non-lethal, then move up to semi-lethal, and then move up to lethal force if it was required. And that's what you should do to try to minimize it. But in all honesty, I think that, if someone is aggressed upon, they really have the right to use whatever means at their disposal to defend their life and their property, quite frankly. I think it's a very clear-cut thing. So, Vinny, I'm going to try to squeeze one more caller in, but thank you so much. I'm really glad that you called in. Continue with your work, and I believe your main website is thevinnyeastwoodshow.com. Is that correct?
That's right. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, go ahead, make my news. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than the truth is Vinny's jokes.
There you go. See, there's Vinny's unique brand of humor that he injects in there, keeping it very dark topics, as he does discuss, as I do, toward the lighter side with his unique humor and personality. So check out the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, ladies and gentlemen. Vinny, thanks so much for calling into the show today. Let's see if we can bring one more person in if we have time. I think we have a couple of minutes. All right, I'm going to go to Joe Brogan. Joe Brogan, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Passio. Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. You're coming in loud and clear, Joe. We have limited time, so go right to your question or comment.
I understand, Mark. I know that your preferred format is let you present all the info first, ask questions later. I think that's the most efficient way, so I'll just ask for the same respect, explain to your listeners, I'm a former Iraq-Afghanistan veteran, member of the U.S. Army, current pension collector from the U.S. Treasury based on a disability that I collect from being injured in Iraq. I just have a few notes, and whatever resonates with you, you can reply on an open-ended segment. We've got less than 5 minutes less. I don't want to disrupt the listeners anymore with a back and forth. So I just have some quick notes. You talk about the questions being related to right livelihood. So I will suggest a guidance for the notes. I talk about a society of meaning. And what I like all your listeners to know who are anarchists and individualistic fighters for freedom, for order followers who are coming out of a tithing system or tariff-related agreement where we have been signed into captivity by the United States government or whatever government we have been indoctrinated to support. I just want you guys to know it's an inch-by-inch fight for order followers to escape these government controls and manipulations on their consciousness in order to exercise our own free will. So it takes a while. So I would just offer some criticisms to the way your program is going, Mark. I know you're such a metaphysical guy, and you talk in broad distances and lengthy strides about the metaphysical and long-term implications of these choices of immorality. But I would just pose these few challenges to you real quickly in less than 2 minutes here. When we're Americans fighting for commercialism, for industrialized society in the West, and we agree with women's rights, we agree with freedom of choice, et cetera, to a large degree. When we're trying to talk about slavery and our corporate owners, our bank owners, our government owners, but we've been indoctrinated into a system to support going to war for fascist, communist dictatorships, for example, in the Middle East, where the women have no rights whatsoever. They have to stand 6 feet behind the men and wear masks around their face in order to talk. They have to have certain acceptance. I would ask about that and how where do you draw the line between true freedom of the individual and supporting the elimination of these complete control systems? It's like this Hegelian dialectic that only you could provide insight into if you ever chose to provide political commentary, which I think you should, and I truly believe you should. One note I have about you being a political activist in a way is your notes on Anarchapulco, this most recent segment. You gave a 2-hour presentation on what anarchists are not doing and perhaps what they should do. I would suggest when you're talking to the military, you've given your 10-hour lectures on natural law. You've given
Folks, that's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. I'll probably continue with the question and answer session next week, folks. So remember, whatonearthishappening.com. Government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great week.